Okay, good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Town of Ramapo Town Board meeting. This is our meeting of Wednesday, June 12th, 2013. And I'd like to ask our town clerk, Christian Sampson, to call the roll, please.
Councilman Friedman?
Here.
Councilwoman Logan?
Here.
Councilman and Deputy Supervisor Withers? Councilman Ullman?
Here.
Supervisor St. Lawrence?
Here. I'd like to ask Councilman Friedman to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Deputy Supervisor Withers called me just before I came in and told me that his daughter received an award at her school, and he was going down there with his wife and the rest of his family to receive the award. He'll try to make it later if he can. Okay, the first item on the agenda is going to be personnel. So I would like to now introduce our Director of Personnel, Linda Condon. Linda?
Good evening. The first item, item 3A, is a resolution to reclassify the position of Assistant Maintenance Mechanic to Maintenance Mechanic 1 in the Town of Ramapo Parks and Recreation Department.
Moved by Councilwoman Logan, seconded by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Item 3B is a resolution to appoint Ronald Call, Maintenance Mechanic 1, effective June 15, 2013.
Moved by Councilwoman Logan, seconded by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Ron, congratulations. Come on up. Linda, a handshake there for all the hard work that Linda did. Okay.
Oh, good.
Turn around one second. I just want to give a wave to everybody out there. Ron's worked with us for 16 years. Before that, he worked several years as a seasonal and worked 16 years, and now he's going to be taking care of all the pools. And I asked you, how's it going? I've seen you over there early in the morning. Things are looking good. Knock on wood. Thanks. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
And I wasn't.
Thank you, Ron, for all the service you've performed in the town, up to date and in the future. Thank you. Linda?
Item 3C is a resolution to appoint Pedro Quijada as grounds worker, effective June 15, 2013.
Moved by Councilwoman Logan, seconded by Councilman Friedman. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Pedro, come on up. Congratulations.
He likes to be called Peter.
Oh,
Peter it is.
Congratulations. See you Monday. Okay.
Congratulations, Peter. Stand right here and turn around and give a wave to everybody there at home. Peter's worked with us as a seasonal for 3 years, a little bit more than 3 years, and now will be a full-time permanent employee. Peter, congratulations. Thank you for all your service so far.
Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. The next item on the agenda is a public hearing. It's 8 p.m. This is a public hearing on local law, amending local law number 10-2004 of the zoning as amended to change the zoning map of the town of Ramapo. And I'll recognize our town attorney, Michael Klein. Michael?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. We'll begin, if we may, by reading into the record the notice of public hearing, which reads as follows. Notice is hereby given by the Town Board of the Town of Ramapo that pursuant to the provisions of the Town Law of the State of New York, a public hearing will be held at 8:00 p.m. at the Ramapo Town Hall, 237 Route 59, Suffern, New York, 10901, on the 12th day of June 2013, to consider the adoption of a local law entitled, quote, a local law amending local law number 10-2004, zoning as amended, to change the zoning map of the town of Ramapo, end quote, which local law shall provide as follows. Local law number reads as follows. Be it enacted by the Town Board of the Town of Ramapo as follows. Section 1, amend Article 2, Section 376-21, zoning map of the town of Ramapo, changing the zoning designation of a parcel located on the north side of Route 59 at the intersection with Augusta Avenue, which is known and designated as Section 56.11-3-53.6, plus an MR8 zoning subject to an MU1 zoning district. Section 2, this local law shall take effect immediately upon the filing with the Secretary of State. Notice is hereby further given that all interested persons will be given an opportunity to be heard. I would ask that the following documents be deemed as exhibits for purposes of the hearing. Number 1 would be an affidavit of publication in the Rockland County Times. Number 2 will be an affidavit of posting, which was done by the town clerk's office. Number 3 is an affidavit of posting and an affidavit of mailing provided by the applicant. Number 4 is the planning board report dated May 9th, 2013. Number 5 is the general municipal law review by the County of Rockland Planning Department dated March 19th, 2013. Number 6 is a letter from Ira M. Emanuel, PC, responding to the county GML. That is dated June 11th, 2013. Number 7 will be a Rockland County Department of Highway letter dated January 18th, 2013. Number 8, Rockland County Sewer District Number 1 letter dated January 9th, 2013. Number 9 is a New York State Department of Transportation, New York State Department of Transportation letters dated 11/20/12 and 3/4/13. Number 10, Deputy Building Inspector memo dated 2/20/13. And finally, a sanitary sewer analysis dated January 8th, 2013. And I'm sorry, one more. This is number 12. This will be a traffic impact study and an update of that study by John Collins Engineers. And I believe that completes the exhibits which are deemed marked for purposes of the hearing. I think it would be appropriate at this point in time to ask the applicant to make its presentation.
Okay, will the applicant, Mr. Emanuel, please make the presentation? Yes, please. And if you use the microphone, then anyone at home can, watching can see as well, and hear.
Good evening. Ira Emanuel, New City, New York. I'm the attorney for the applicant, Connectivity System. This is a parcel that is located on the north side of Route 59, just to the west of Augusta Avenue. The parcel is currently zoned MR8, which allows 8 residential units per acre. The request that we are making this evening, and that actually we had made previously by way of petition that we're having a public hearing on this evening, is to change the zoning from MR8 to MU1. The basic difference between the MR8 and the MU1 district is the MR8 is strictly residential, multifamily residential, whereas the MU1 is a mixed use that allows multifamily residential above commercial uses, and also allows commercial uses perhaps in separate buildings if necessary.
I don't mean to interrupt you through your whole presentation, but since you're on that point, in that mixed-use zone, where you say you're correct, it allows commercial and residential. I believe in the law it's 60/40. I think this is a little bit off of that, so if you would address that too.
Oh, yes, we will.
I believe you're at 56/44 or something in that neighborhood, but if you would address that
something
in your
like that,
presentation.
right. Fine. The parcel, before I get into that, if I may,
Yeah.
the parcel is not a small parcel. It is 6.5 acres gross. After you do the subtraction for easements and slopes, et cetera, it comes down to 6.2 acres, and it has approximately 800 feet of frontage on Route 59. So this is a rather large piece of property, which is important because under your MU1 zone, you only need 20,000 square feet. So this parcel is actually 13 times as large as the minimum lot requirement. That accounts for a lot, and accounts for a lot of what we're able to do here and able to accomplish here. Going back to the question that you asked, Mr. Supervisor, the zoning does in fact indicate that it wishes a 60-40 split, 60% commercial, 40% residential. However, it also contemplates three-story buildings with the lower level as commercial and the upper levels being residential. Well, it doesn't take too much math to figure out that makes it commercial at 33% and 66% at residential. We have a somewhat different balance, a little bit more skewed towards the commercial because of the four buildings that are proposed. One building is entirely commercial with a proposed bank on the lower level and office space above. But it's almost impossible to comply with the spirit of the zoning as it's currently written and still come up with that 60-40 split.
And would you just identify what is the split? Is it 56-44?
You know what? I didn't do the math.
Okay. It's 56-44. It is, thank you.
Okay, I'll
Well, that's according to the
That's
county planning department.
Subject to check. But
I'm not sure
that's from the
that's
GML
accurate,
review.
but that's what they represent.
right. And again, that's the current proposal as a concept. This has already gone through this is actually the second concept proposal that we have put forward with respect to this project. It's actually 10,000 square feet smaller than the original proposal and configured much differently, all in response to comments that were made by your staff and by members of the planning board. So we are actually taking this whole thing and shrinking the development even from the MU1, whereas we do have somewhat more in terms of the number of units that would have otherwise been allowed under MU1. MU1 would have allowed us 51 units. We are currently proposing 56 residential units. The units under the...
You're saying 51 because you're saying it's 6.2, the buildable acreage.
We actually had a plan...
Versus the 6.5 would give you 52.
We actually had a plan that had gotten partway through the planning process that showed 51 units. So this is not simply our arithmetic. Okay. This is actually a planned out 51 units, but those 51 units were significantly larger than the units that we're talking about here. They were arrayed not as townhomes necessarily, but as pods of buildings.
So you're saying the floor area ratio is sort of the same, but they're just a little bit smaller units.
The units are actually much smaller. Those units were 4,500 square feet. On 1,500 square feet on each level, and these that we're proposing now are 1,100 square feet each. So it's a much different market, and it's a market that really has a need for two-bedroom rentals, which would be attractive to young people who are just starting out, young marrieds, and also for empty nesters once the children have gone. It is a significant need that, quite frankly, I've been talking about for at least 10 years in this county, and people are finally catching up to me. But it really is something that is very, very much needed countywide, nationwide, if you read the demographic studies, and particularly in this community.
I would agree with that. But do you mind me interrupting your...
Go ahead.
When we did the views of Pomona, we had some caretaker units. We allowed a couple units extra for caretaker. Are any of these caretaker units
No.
or any of these will all be rental units
These are all
and commercial?
These are all rental units. All the residential are rental units, and well, the commercial units are rental as well, but not for residential purposes.
Okay.
Okay? As I said, this is at the corner of Augusta and 59. The zoning are in the surrounding area. You have R15A to the north, single-family homes, some of which are some two-family homes on roughly 15,000 square foot lots. To the west is the bank.
Wells Fargo Bank.
The Wells Fargo Bank, which ironically is zoned MR8. And just beyond that is a CS district. That CS district winds around the other side of Route 59. So we have CS community shopping partially opposite. There is a school directly opposite. South of all of that is an R15 district. And then as you go towards the east, towards Muncie, on the other side of Augusta Avenue is an MR12 project, which was just recently approved for 45 units. And then on the other side of Route 59 is the Glen Hill condominiums, which are currently under construction. And then, of course, you get into central Muncie.
And Glen Hill is MR12 as well.
Glen Hill is MR12 as well. As we started to discuss, these are going to be 4 buildings of 3 stories each. 3 of the buildings are going to have two stories of residences above, 1 story of commercial and retail down below. The 4th building, which will actually be the one closest to Route 59, will have a bank on the lower level, offices above. No commercial storefronts will be facing the residential area to the north. Okay, that will simply be entrances for the residential and, of course, the residential windows and facades. And because it is being used for residences, and because we're having those rear entrances basically as being available for the residences, the building will have architectural treatment all the way around. You're not going to have the cinder block back wall as you sometimes see on commercial buildings.
So the facade will look as if it's the front of the building on all 4 sides?
That's correct. Okay. It will be a
There
different
is an
looking
irony
front.
when you mentioned the Wells Fargo Bank is an MR8, a residential zone,
Yes.
and it's a commercial bank. It's a certain irony that this property is an MR8 and not an MU already, because it is on Route 59, which is the main commercial corridor in the county. And most things
now
touch
now
it.
that you mention it, you're absolutely right.
I'll let you go ahead. It is. There's a certain
Yeah,
irony
it
there.
does, and that's exactly the point. To be perfectly honest, as I said, we could get bigger units, the developer could get bigger units, more units, probably certainly much more per unit with the existing zoning, but it just doesn't fit, doesn't belong there. The MU1 is a much more logical and much more appropriate zoning for this particular piece of property. As I said, this has gone through a couple of iterations, even with the MU1 consideration. The planning board had asked us to take what were 2 very long residential buildings and to make them shorter, and so instead of the 2 long buildings, we now have 3 shorter buildings. We've moved the buildings further away from the residences. As I mentioned, there are residences up on the northern side, and we have taken those, built the buildings and moved them further away. There's now parking there, but we have taken those buildings and they're now about 80 feet away from the rear lot lines, and of course much further from the actual houses. The total building size has been reduced by 10,000 square feet, so it's smaller. The number of units has been reduced from 64 to 56 in the MU1 configuration. We've also improved the traffic circulation, increased the number of parking spaces. We still will need a variance for that. And in the letter that I submitted in response to the county planning department, I went through a very detailed explanation of what happens with your code and the way things are set up. The numbers just don't seem to work. And it's not necessarily only for this project. There just seems to be some sort of disconnect in there somewhere. And you may want to take a look at that, just not only for this project, but for future projects as well. We've discussed the need for this rental housing. The board recognizes it. This community also is growing, and so there is a need for retail as well. We think that this is a very good mix. This is exactly the type of development that the MU1 zone contemplates. And we would ask that the board, which is the lead agency in this project, grant a negative declaration, grant the zone change, and if necessary, grant an amendment to the comprehensive plan.
You write very well, Mr. Manuel.
Well, thank you.
And you also submitted some other supplemental traffic reports, I
Yes.
believe, as well. That was referred to by Mr. Klein, our attorney. There's one portion of the project that I'm concerned about, and I want you to address it.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
I believe the town board's concerned about that as well.
Everyone on the town board I've spoken to about this, or have spoken to me about this, we're all concerned about this. And we like the juxtapositioning of the retail towards 59. We like the buildings being broken up into 3 separate buildings rather than a long building. Aesthetically, it looks better. We like the idea that it's going to be on all 4 sides. It's going to look like a front of a building, so it aesthetically is nice. And we like the fact that the residential is juxtaposed toward the back. But the town board does not like is that on the plan that you have a small park there, and then you have two other lots that go out to Grove Street.
Right.
And the town board really believes, I'll speak for myself with the power of 5 people, because as Councilman Ullman says, we're all aligned on this. We believe that that lot, there are 2 lots there, but at least one of those lots, if not both, or, depending on what your answers are, we believe that should become a town park. We believe that you're going to be having more residential here. You've allowed for a small park there, I understand that. But it is a growing neighborhood on Grove Street. There is a need for a little pocket park there. And I think it would be a nice amenity to the people that live there already to be able to have a park out of this as well. And so that is a consideration that the town board believes would be in the best interest of the entire neighborhood.
Okay. If I could address that
Sure.
a bit. First of all, the park, the play area that is set forth there is not so small. It's 65,000 square feet. So it's got some size to it. The two parcels.
Hold on. 65,000, that's an acre and a half?
Yeah,
And the back
I believe
there.
so. Money?
I don't think it's 65,000 square feet.
No, together it's.
I have my engineer here.
I think it's maybe half of that.
Yeah, this is 20.
No, here. No, just here. Just here.
Hello, Mr. Jackson, how are you?
This whole thing is 35. Both of them.
It's much less than 65.
Probably like 8.
Yeah.
65.
I think you meant 6,500 maybe, right?
Possibly, I'm sorry.
Between friends, what's another zero?
65,000, we could build a stadium there.
This, by the way, is the wrong plan. This is the plan. This is the plan.
Correct, and the green is right there in the back. Yeah.
It's this area here.
Would you just come in the middle and show that to the camera and just point out what we're talking about so people at home can see that?
So it's 34 together. So this is
Okay, and the portion that is the park is that green spot above the brown area there, right there, correct? And what the town board is talking about is that blank area from that green spot going out to Remsen, to continue that park and make it closer to all the way to Grove. And I believe those are 15,000 square foot lots, so that would make the park probably about 22,000 square feet. It's a 12,000 square foot park now, and then that we are recommending, or we believe that we should continue that out to Grove Street, adding another, I believe those are 15,000 square foot lots there on Grove.
Okay, there are 2 lots. That's the other aspect of this
Okay.
we need to discuss.
Would you-
Go back to the microphone.
Yep.
There are 2 lots. The one to the
East.
The one to the east. This lot to the east is not owned by our client.
Oh, okay. Well, then I won't have you deem that to become.
There is an existing house. There's an existing house on both lots, by the way. But the lot to the east is not owned by our client. It's owned by a neighbor of the client. There is an agreement between our client and this neighbor to swap some land so that we could get the configuration that we're talking about here. This lot is owned by my client. It is set up as a 15,000 square foot lot, which is consistent with the R15A zoning. There is a house there. He would like to keep a house, which he feels would be consistent with the neighborhood. You have a rather unbroken line of houses along Grove Street here. And he would like to continue to have that house. He thinks that's most appropriate. That's not to say that I won't take this back to him and ask him, but we did talk about this.
Mr. Emanuel, we do get dedication and donations in the process.
Oh, I'm aware of that.
Where there would be houses on it, so it's
okay.
not uncommon.
I'm aware. I've
Okay.
been on the receiving end of that as well. The play area here, this 12,000 square foot play area, my client would be willing to dedicate to the town so that it would be a town park, accessible to town residents, and of course residents from the new project. But I have no authority at this point to have any discussion with respect to this lot here. And that would have to be something I'd have to take up with my client and get back to
That's-
the board on.
we understand that, but we just wanted you to understand that the board believes that there is some added density in the front, which would be appropriate, as you mentioned, and that would ameliorate that lot and the 15A, what you would be getting up, there'd be a net there, it'd be the same. You wouldn't be losing anything, and the town would be gaining a great park in an area that really needs a park.
And of course, if this did come to fruition, it would of course be credited against the money in lieu of land.
Oh, absolutely. And let me just have our counsel, it would be credited against the money in lieu of land.
The whole concept of money in lieu of land is to give money where a developer is not producing parkland. So if parkland is being produced, that would be a credit.
So then we would appraise that for its full value, and we would balance that against any of the money in lieu of land, and whichever way it would work out. And if it were greater, then I would imagine then that'd be a nice gift, but otherwise it would be able to balance off the cost.
Yeah, and that would be a determination by the planning board, but yes, that's what would happen.
Okay.
Okay. One last item, we discussed a little bit the architectural treatment. I now have the boards, so if the board is interested, I can show you, and I'll show it to the camera as well.
Those are articulated too there in the front, correct? These are all articulated here.
On the top is the commercial side, the bottom is the residential side. And these are just concepts.
So that'll be the front and at the back.
This would be the Route 59 side, this would be the Grove Street side.
Are there store names?
Oh, you have stone, I just want to know, you do have stone on the front. It looks like about 5 feet of stone there, and then some other brick and articulated with shingles and...
This project would, of course, be subject to architectural review before any approval by the planning board.
And just want to know, Chris Sampson is not just our town clerk, he's now president of the entire Town Clerks Association for the state of New York, 932 towns, and we're very proud of you, Christian.
No. Okay. If the board has no further questions,
Is Mr. Jackson going to make any presentation on, or is he going to?
not if I could help it.
Just let me ask Mr. Jackson this. Does this meet all our zero runoff in this?
Leonard Jackson of Leonard Jackson Associates, 26 Fireman's Memorial Drive, Pomona, New York. Yes, it does meet all of those requirements. There are no engineering or technical issues that we haven't addressed. This is strictly a matter of use and making it aesthetically pleasing to the community.
Thank you.
I just got one question for Lenny, Mr. Jackson. The water detention basin, how deep or how high is that going to be?
The detention basins will not, if you're asking about safety and things of that nature, they will not be unsafe. They're always designed to safety. They meet New York State requirements for water quality and for zero runoff, which was what the supervisor's question was about.
I'm sure it's going to be safe, but I want to know,
He just wants to make sure there are no steep walls that his kids were playing on and would fall in.
The definition, by the way, New York State has requirements to make them safe. The slopes are defined. Generally, the slopes of a detention basin are no greater than 1/4. Then there's a flat plateau within the basin, and then it gets steeper there. And so the New York State DEC has set the requirements for those basins, and we meet those requirements to make them safe.
thank you.
Sure.
I'm sorry, Mr. Jackson, can you just discuss for the board, and I know it's addressed in Mr. Emanuel's letter, but your original proposal, which was significantly larger, discussed underground parking, and now that's not proposed, and I think you have reasons for that. Can you just describe that for the board?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, when we were before the planning board, they made several suggestions about what they found unpleasing about the site. We had accommodated those suggestions, and you see those accommodated in the current plans. It turns out we broke up the buildings into shorter buildings, which, by the way, makes it unfeasible to have underground parking. It's a matter of slopes and getting access to the buildings. But the other comments of the planning board were noted by the applicant, and in fact, he did accommodate them. The number of units that are smaller, the space utilized is smaller. We actually moved the buildings around to accommodate the adjacent neighbors. So we did try to meet the needs or the suggestions of the planning board in this current plan, which of course, if a zone change is granted, we'll go back to the planning board. We'll still need a site plan approval, and we'll work further to make sure that everybody's pleased with the final result.
Thank you.
I have one comment.
Yes, Councilwoman Logan?
Mr. Emmanuel,
Yes, ma'am.
can you just comment on the situation regarding the delivery? You talk about how it won't impede internal traffic and it'll be away from the customers' cars. I see you have berths on building A and C, but what about most of the times the deliveries don't come through the front door? I see this time they will come through the front door, but how do we ensure that it's not during times when children are around, or what discussion has taken place regarding that safety issue?
Well, Lenny could possibly fill this in a little better, but first of all, most deliveries take place in the morning.
Okay.
Usually early in the morning, especially if the stores are open earlier. The loading spaces are set up in the lanes that are between the buildings, and so that's away from the general traffic circulation. Most of the traffic circulation will be in the parking areas and not going back and forth from the rear of the building to the front of the building. So they put the loading berth there, and the delivery trucks will be able to park there, take a hand truck, go to the front door of the store and in. We're talking about relatively small stores. You're not going to get tractor trailer loads coming into any of these stores.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I assume we're talking about condominiums? Is that what's proposed for the?
Rentals.
Rentals, okay. And has there been any analysis done about the tax revenues that would be anticipated based on the plan as you've proposed it?
No. But certainly.
You're going to pay them.
Yeah, I mean, clearly the taxes would be paid. Clearly the taxes would be paid. It's going to be commercial. It's going to be rental. It certainly pays more taxes than some of the other uses that might be permitted in that location. You know, it will be probably more beneficial as an MU1 than it would be as an MR8. But I can't give you dollars and cents on that. That's just gut feel.
And have you worked out everything with the Department of Transportation as to the ingress and egress on?
Not yet. That's a process.
Okay, because I know they have a letter in there and as part of this, and that process will be completed then if the zone change were to go through in the planning process.
Yes, that's correct. And DOT generally only takes it to a certain level at this stage of the game because they have limited resources. They want to see a certain level of progress being made at the local level before they start really digging into it. But Route 59 is their road, and basically, while there's some room for negotiation, we basically have to do what they tell us to do.
Correct, okay.
Not really a question, maybe sort of to try to summarize so I can understand exactly what's proposed here. The 54 units could be built now by right, whether we like it or not. They have that right to build those 54 units.
51 units.
51 units. And those could be built based on what the applicant would like to, whether we vote for this or not, could build these 51 units with an entrance on 59?
Correct.
Or an entrance on Grove. That's up to the applicant pretty much. He owns that property there, so he
Yes.
can do it the way he wants. So the two choices are either to do it on Route 59 and have 54 families sending their kids to school with buses blocking the whole 59 with the red lights, or you could do it on Grove Street and there'll be neighbors there, and that's part of the community that they have new houses there. So the only real proposal is to make the bottom floor commercial.
Well, no, it would be a completely different layout if it was MR8. And as I indicated before, this the MR8 concept had actually gone through the planning board and had progressed quite a distance. I wasn't involved with it at that point, but I have seen those plans. And basically, it is a series of smaller buildings spread throughout the site that are about 4,500 square feet each. How big are they? You have it?
Oh,
Ah,
that's what it would look like.
that's what it would look like.
And that he could do that the applicant could do by right.
Show that to the camera, just so people at home, that's what he could do by right.
4,500, right. 45, each unit would be 4,500 square feet. That's what it would look like. And that's what's...
Besides the aesthetics, the density would be the same except for now you
No,
have
the
commercial on the bottom
the
level.
density would actually be much greater under MR8 because there would be many more bedrooms. We did actually have that analysis in the petition, and it's, if I could find it.
Take your time. So under the MR8,
Here we go.
they would be, those units would be much larger bedroom units.
Under the MR8, we were talking about 51 units with 255 bedrooms. That's what this proposal is.
255 bedrooms.
255 bedrooms under MR8. Under the original MU1 that was proposed with 64 units, we had 128 bedrooms.
Okay. And
So we're probably down in the one teens at this point.
because you're at 54, so you're 10 less,
Right.
and be at least 20. You're probably down to close to 108.
108, yeah, something like that. So significantly less dense, less intense. The other thing is that because we're talking about two-bedroom units, which would be geared simply because that's the marketplace, to young marrieds and to older folks who are empty nesters, you're not going to have a lot of school-age kids. What children would be there would probably be quite young, probably preschool, nursery school age, and as families develop and more children are born into the families, those families would move out and be replaced by others similarly. So there really would be a much less intense use from a residential perspective under the MU1.
Go ahead, Nancy.
I definitely like the concept of having the commercial on 59. We don't want school buses, I mean, obviously they have that right, but we don't want school bus on 59 with the lights flashing and
Right.
holding 59 every morning when it's rush hour.
Absolutely.
Putting that onto Grove, which again, the applicant could do either way, putting on Grove sort of eliminates that. So the commercial in front definitely, I think, looks good. The residential in the back, we like that again, but I strongly agree with the supervisor regarding additional park space. And the money in lieu of land, maybe Alan, what's the dollar amount? Is that $2,500 per unit? I would say if you add in the amount of units by 3,500, you're not losing that much by giving an additional lot in lieu of the money to make a park there. And then a park doesn't necessarily have to be a basketball court. It could be a passive park, maybe some benches, maybe a couple swings or something like that. Thank you.
That'd be 189,000, is that right?
It's 50
54 units?
times
Yeah.
35.
Yeah.
It's about 200,000. I don't know what a lot is worth in that in real estate, but
A 15A lot.
Again, I'll
That would
confer
be
with my
part-
client on that.
Okay.
Yeah, I got some things.
Go ahead, Councilman Friedman.
Keep saying that there are 51 units, 51 residential units here? in this?
54.
54?
Which plan are we talking about
The
here?
one that's before us
The
tonight.
one that we're proposing?
Yes.
Is 54 units.
It's 54 units.
54 two-bedroom units.
Because on this plan here, building A has 8 on the second and third floor, building B and C has 10, so that's 56. Just wondering if we're
I'm
looking
sorry,
at the
50,
wrong
did I say
plan.
50, 56?
56.
Do you know how many commercial units you're going to have underneath that?
That kind of varies depending upon how much the store wants. What I can tell you, commercial is usually measured in terms of square footage. There's 59,108 square feet of commercial.
Do you have any kind of, I'm sure you have some kind of business analysis as to what you need in order to,
Take
to
5,000
develop?
square foot of 5,000 square feet per. Okay,
And
the
the
bank
bank,
is
the bank
going
would
to,
be
the
the
bank will
largest.
require more. Okay, because the bank will probably take up the entire lower level of building D. 3,000 square feet per? The bank is 3,000, and what are the others? And what are the other commercial units? Okay.
Okay, so the bank is 3,000, and there'll be some other office spaces, and then office spaces on the...
Office space above.
Okay. So I'm looking at approximately about 28,000 non-storage retail in the building A, B, and C.
I haven't
So
done
that would be
I haven't done the
28,000
math.
non-storage would be
I've got the
office space.
I've got the totals. Lenny, you know what, I know you had them very broken down on the drawing.
By the way,
actually.
your bedroom, well, you're right, in the one teens when you said, but because with 56 units, it'd be about 112.
Yeah, I think it's on the parking count. Actually, I do have breakdowns. If you want them, I can give them to you.
I think Councilman Friedman was the
Sure.
floor, and
Bill-
would like that.
Okay. Building D, which would be the bank building on the side. First floor is 6,400 square feet. Second floor, 7,280. Third floor, 7,280, for a total of 20,960.
And building D is all commercial.
Building D is all commercial.
Okay.
Because that's closer to 59.
Right.
So
I got it right here.
21.
I got it right here. Okay. Why don't you put that out so that they can see it?
So the first floor is the 3,000, and that's used entirely for the bank.
Well,
And then-
about half of the first floor would be used for the bank.
Oh, here, actually, there's a
Yeah, it should be on there.
59,108.
Sorry?
59,108 is what you have as the total
Right.
retail. and
Total
commercial.
retail, yes.
And so you said approximately how much per each, per commercial unit, per storefront?
It's about 3,000 per? Okay,
So it's 20, so you're probably talking about 20 in total, 20 different
sure.
units or, okay.
If
Can
if
you-
I could add, I'd have been an accountant.
Can you give a synopsis of your traffic study, just we haven't really gone over that?
The traffic
And what the
study.
impact you
Lenny,
anticipate?
Can you talk about the traffic study? Okay. To be honest, I haven't
Just a- just a
reviewed
really
the traffic
brief-
study, other than,
We don't have a traffic engineer, but we have a traffic study.
okay, all right, go ahead.
Can we get the cool traffic studies where you can see the red lights and the cars moving and all that
Yeah,
stuff?
the virtual one.
I have to admit that we completed a traffic study, it's submitted, it's here. I don't know of any problems in terms of the traffic study. Mr. Collins has been in the business for 50 years. I'm not sure whether he recommended a traffic light or not, but the study's been completed. It's been submitted to the DOT, and I don't know what the conclusion is, other than it's being handled properly.
So we don't have any idea.
If there was an issue about the traffic, I would know about it. Apparently, there's no issue, and it's being addressed
And
appropriately.
if we just make sure that we all get copies of it, I know that I'm definitely not comfortable voting tonight until I see the traffic study, until I hear what the neighbors say, to digest it and think over it.
What I will tell you, Mr. Ullman and Mr. Friedman, just based upon experience in dealing with the town, we would not have gotten to this public hearing unless your consultants that reviewed it were satisfied with the information that was provided, including the traffic study.
Mr. Mayor, maybe I can help out. The conclusion by Mr. Collins to the traffic study is, as summarized in the study and shown on table number 1, the proposed Hearthstone Village development will not significantly affect the area roadways. Similar levels of service and delays will be expressed under future no-build and future build conditions.
Is there any comment from our
Let-
planner?
Let me also say that, judging from the date of this study, which was October 2012, this was based on the larger project.
We
It was
also
based,
have,
it would have been based upon the 64-unit project.
So what is your analysis of the current, because part of the traffic study is to analyze what it is right now. The traffic study suggests that there wouldn't be a major impact with this project. What is the assessment of the current traffic situation in the area?
Mr. Friedman, not only am I not an accountant, I'm not a traffic
That's
engineer.
okay.
But I think our council
Yes.
Right,
could,
and also with the traffic study, I mean, even though it's a traffic study, I would say the traffic study is a little more conservative because they're looking at it now versus built. The only difference that really makes a difference is adding in the commercial, because even if the traffic were to get worse, he has that right to build the 51 units. So the difference in traffic needs to be from 51 units to throw in the few more units and more commercial.
Right.
So that's really what's relevant.
Okay. In addition, when traffic studies, and I have read this, it's been a little while since I've read it, but as with all traffic studies, it takes into account not only this proposed development, but all developments that are in the pipeline before the town of Ramapo that are within the study area. So, for example, it took into account Augusta Meadows East, it took into account Glen Hill, it took into account anything else that would have been in the study area, and it also projects out into the future for a number of years. How many years? It depends upon the particular study, but it does attempt to do that. Again, I'm not a traffic engineer. I don't know exactly what I don't remember exactly what the conclusions were, other than as read in the summary by Mr. Kine. And as I said before, your consultants have had an opportunity to review this. They have not asked for additional information. They have not asked for updates, so presumably they're satisfied with it. And I suggest that you speak with Mr. Lang and the other consultants at FP Clark if you have specific questions with respect to the traffic study.
So let me just wrap this all up. To get to the entire point that I began with, you have 56 units of residences, and you have conservatively 20 units of different commercial businesses that are going to be in the area. Your traffic study suggests there will be no significant impact.
That's correct.
You're putting 20 businesses and 56 homes in the middle of Route 59 at the center of Muncie, right next to the intersection with Route 306, and the study suggests that there's no significant traffic impact. I would love to see what that's why I asked for what the analysis of the current traffic situation is.
I think the word is significant. Obviously, there'll be a traffic impact, and whether or not how significant it is why they do the studies. And they give different ratings as they do to intersections as well. But I don't know if did our planners make any comments to their plan, Mr. Klein?
Well, we have two things here. We have the report by Mr. Collins, and then we have a letter reassessing his conclusions based on the downsizing of the project. We don't have comments by, at least I don't have a letter from Frederick P. Clark addressing that.
When we do ask for that letter, I think Councilman Friedman's comments should be addressed as to what, defining that significant and giving us kind of the delta between where it is now and what the impact would be.
And the traffic report identifies those pertinent intersections, it classifies them as to their current condition, and then it analyzes each one as to how this project will impact those. And, there are some intersections that don't work that well. The question, of course, for this applicant is, does this project really affect that, or basically it has little or negligible impact as to those intersections? I would suggest, and as I was going to later on, that the board may want to formulate some specific requests for Mr. Lang to present to the board before we meet again, and he can address traffic as well as a couple of other issues that I think Mr. Emanuel has addressed.
Okay. Councilman Friedman?
If I may, I'm not a traffic engineer, but I read the traffic study. Your question was, what is the level of service now? And it varies, but there are areas where the level of service is bad. The traffic study identifies them. In fact, the level of service in some areas is F. Which
is half?
F.
F.
Yeah, A being the best and F being the worst. Those are the existing level of, it varies, but there are areas, places in this area where the level of service is F. The conclusion as a result of this project is, as Mr. Collins states, that the proposed Hearthstone Village development will not significantly affect area roadways, and that's the.
So it's an F, and it would always be an F.
No, as a matter of fact, he says further. He says that, and he recommends, by the way, that this driveway be signalized, as shown in the table 1, which he provides. And he says, with signalization, the New York State Route 59 Glen Hill Road proposed side driveway east access is projected to operate at an overall level of service of C. In other words, yeah, apparently so. So he's proposing a signalization.
Right.
The level of service in the area does include very bad. This project will not affect that level of service. It won't make it worse. And in fact, in some areas, it may make it better because there'll be a signal.
If there's no light now and it's clogged up, then how would putting a light in unclog?
Well, I think Glen Hill is an F because there's no light there, and when people try to come out, with the traffic going in both directions.
As a matter of fact, I think your question is a good one, and I think the answer is this. If you have no signalization, then it doesn't control traffic. If you put in a signal, then instead of having constant stream of traffic where people can't get in and out of an intersection, the signal actually controls it and improves it.
And if I recall, that the last zone change, actually, it was you representing with Shoppers Haven, that empty strip mall in front of Shoppers Haven was the same argument there. Traffic will get much worse, but it's going to be better than what he's allowed to do by code.
Correct.
which was to build another strip mall, which he's allowed to by right, would make traffic, I think was also bringing down to an F, versus what was proposed would actually bring it up to, I believe it was a C.
Actually, that did work that way as well,
Yeah.
because that intersection in Orchard Street now...
Is much better.
It's completely different roadway. That used to always be blocked on Main Street, coming from Route 59 on 306, all the way through there. It was impassable.
Yeah,
And
but-
now it moves very nicely with that signalized light there.
By the way, although I'm not a traffic engineer, I do hang out with them. And levels of service, if you take a look in any traffic study, it will define for you what a level of service measures. And what levels of service measure is the time it takes to get through an intersection. So if the level of service measures the time it takes to get through an intersection, and you put a signal at that intersection, you almost can't help but to improve the level of service.
I agree, and you know, the point that I think Councilman Friedman brings up some good questions. I think Mr. Jackson addressed some of them, and that level of service will be something we'll ask of Frederick P. Clark. But going back to what Mr. Ullman said, people had a right to put 51 units there already. When I grew up in this town, I lived on Campbell Avenue, and there was no light at Campbell Avenue, and there were no cars in 59. And very few.
Mm-hmm.
Every once in a while, a buggy would come down, bring somebody to Good Samaritan Hospital. But
You're not that old.
Well, there were buggies. So people had a right to build along 59, but they didn't develop it. The fact that this person is one of the last properties to be developed there does not take away their right to be able to put the development in. And as was noted, you're going from 51 to 56. Which reinforces one last time to you to speak with the owners, with the applicant, that since it is going from 51 to 56, that's 5 additional units, not counting the commercial, 5 additional housing units that would more than make up for what the donation of the park would be on that back lot going to Grove Street. I just wanted to
I understand the message.
pound that message home one more time. All right.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions from us before we do want to hear from the public? And you'll stay here and answer any questions
Of
that
course.
come up in the public? Any other questions now? And there may be some more questions from council members after we hear from the public as well. So at this time, we'll ask anybody in the public who'd like to speak, raise your hand. Ma'am, would you come up, madam? And state your name and address for our clerk, Christian Sampson, and he'll make that part of the record.
Hello, my name is Esther Tillum. My address is 6 Treetop Lane, Muncie, New York. Okay, first I'd like to compliment you on the idea of the park. It's very necessary, and I'd like to get back to it.
Okay.
Okay, but first I'll begin with what I prepared. Our economy is based on capitalism. We expect someone who owns a piece of property to develop it. We propose that this piece of property remain MR8, is that it? Residential. Okay, that it stay residential. We oppose the commercialization of this area. I'd like to read a petition that was circulated in the neighborhood and give out the petition to each of.
You can read it, I'll hand them out, all right? I'll give the original to our council clerk.
We, the undersigned, are opposed to the commercialization of our quiet residential neighborhood. We feel such commercialization will destroy the quality of life of the undersigned, and we are totally opposed to a zoning change. By the way, there are about 200 signatures here. I did not reach everybody because people were at work. As you can see on the vicinity map, which I hope you all have, this area is a residential area. This includes Joshua Court, the Glen Hill development, and the upcoming Augusta Estates development, which are all residential developments off Route 59. There is nothing commercial in this area. There are actually sidewalks here, and if you stand there, which I did this morning, there are mothers pushing strollers, children walking to school, and and men rushing to catch buses off these sidewalks. This corridor off Route 59 cannot handle additional traffic. Commercial development in this corridor will create a traffic nightmare and safety issues. And I want to get to that because when you mix commercial and residential, I don't think you're aware of the dangers involved. On November 13th, 2012, the Planning Board recommended almost unanimously that this zone change should not be granted, and the neighbors in this area are unanimously against the zone change, as evidenced by the many signatures on this petition. Why would the zoning board want to foist this change on us? What are you gaining by trying to bring in a commercial area here? You take a walk down here and have a look, and you'll see the entire area is residential. Now, let me get to some of the points. Talking about traffic. Okay, I can just tell you what one of the people who told me when I went to get her signature, she said, take a look out my window. I can't get out of my driveway. And I have to tell you, there were times of the day when I couldn't go around with this petition, because if you'll stand on Remsen Avenue, at certain times of the day, the traffic is backed up almost to Grove Street and beyond. Do you drive the routes? Then we'll talk about the bottom of Grove Street. You have the fire station there, you have Hatzalah there. You have a yield sign with traffic coming from 5 directions. You have children on bicycles, you have, again, mothers pushing strollers. I don't think you realize when you're directing traffic away from Route 59 what you're adding to Grove Street. You already approved a school that never should have been in a residential area. How it got in there, we don't know, but that's an additional 100 boys walking up and down Grove Street. It's an additional, there are additional cars of parents coming to pick up these kids. There are school buses there. Now, let me give you a little bit of an idea of what flows into Grove Street. You approved Augusta Estates, which is fine, but the traffic will go both ways, down to 59 and back to Augusta. Go have a look at some of those homes on Augusta with the stone fences. They are completely demolished by the accidents that take place on Grove Street and Augusta on a constant basis. I went down to the police station and I asked them, could you please give me copies of accidents that took place there in the last 2 years? I'm sorry I didn't bring it along, but if you want, I can bring it with me. I can bring it in and offer it as evidence. It was this thick.
We'd like you to do that.
You'd like me to do that? Definitely, I will do that. What they're proposing
Can I
is...
ask you just I don't mean to interrupt you, but you're talking about the corner of Augusta and
Grove Street.
Looking to the west as it comes down there. There's bad sight lines there. It's kind of like...
Well, Grove Street is composed of 3 hills. You can't see a thing as you're going up each hill. Now, there's another proposal here that I don't think any of you understand. If they're trying to keep the school buses away from Route 59, you're going to add the school buses to Grove Street. There's going to be a walkway, and there are going to be additional school bus stops. Try to envision how many school buses are already coming to Augusta Estates. Come down to Augusta.
Esther, I have to say this. When I get behind a school, because I hear this a lot, and it's just, when I'm behind a school bus in the morning, I think it's absolutely fantastic.
It's wonderful.
I think it's fantastic. We have buses that go into the neighborhood and pick up our children. And we have laws that say you can't pass them for the safety of the children. So I don't buy into, well, we have to stop and wait for buses. We need
I'm not
buses to
saying we
pick up
have
our
to
kids.
stop and wait for buses. I am more than happy. The more children in the neighborhood, the happier I will be. And that's why I'm recommending the residential homes. And let there be 200 and 300 and 400 and 500 and 1,000 children over there, but not commercialization of a residential area. Now, when am I talking about the school buses? I'm talking about the safety. Now, I'm talking about, can that little area visualize, come down to the neighborhood, I'll show you around.
I know the neighborhood.
Okay, can that little piece handle what it's handling? Do you know that we're already overwhelmed? That every day my heart's in my mouth that a child shouldn't get hurt? Come and see. You know, when the snow piles up, what it looks like, it's a nightmare. There's no give on Grove Street. There's no give on that little Augusta. There's nowhere for a child to run if God forbid, the kid slipped. The kid slips in the path of a bus. Now, if you build residential homes on this plot, and school buses come in, you know, there's an orderly bus. It's, by the way, 1, 2, 3, 4 buses, because the children generally go to the same schools. So they're dropped off and they're picked up. Nobody minds waiting behind a bus. We're talking here safety, we're talking traffic, we're talking a mix of commercial and residential. Children are using these streets. You know that 5 o'clock when the kids get home in the wintertime, I watch them walk home, and I'm pretty frightened by it. Add to this mix people who are coming shopping to 20 stores in addition. What you're switching here is you're switching 51 townhouses for 20 stores and 51 apartments. Those townhouses will have those 2-bedroom rentals downstairs. I guarantee you. They'll have accessory apartments. They'll figure it out already. So I'm not worried about the amount of rentals in the neighborhood. There will be enough rentals in the neighborhood. We're talking bringing in commercial, and for what purpose? You're changing the nature of an entire neighborhood. And the banks over there are great neighbors. They are wonderful neighbors. I'd love to see the entire Route 59, you know, and everyone should have money to deposit also. It would be great. They close up.
We don't usually get into a dialogue during a public
Okay,
No,
fine.
but I want,
Okay.
no, Esther, I want to, and a little bit, because
Okay,
there's
then
not
you
a large
spoke
group-
about-
not a large group of people here that are here to speak, but
Well,
I
actually,
do want to
they-
say one
you
thing,
know-
Esther. You say that you don't want the commercialization of a residential neighborhood, but it is a commercial neighborhood, Route 59. If you take it from Jerusalem Pizza to the old Volkswagen area there, Enterprise Shopping, Ralphie's Diner, Rems, you have Capital One Bank on the corner, you have the place that sells the sheds there, then you have Wells Fargo back
They
there on the
all
other side of the street,
close.
you have the K&J Tile. 59 is a commercial.
That area where they're proposing
But I
is
think that's-
quiet. It's all residential. Look at your vicinity map.
But Esther, I think that was the point that Councilman Ullman was making, that you're juxtaposing the commercial where it should be toward 59 and juxtaposing the residential toward
Good,
Grove
so
Street.
I explained it to you. You're moving all the residential towards Grove Street. We're choking already. Did you look at what's proposed for 39 Grove Street? Go from house to
But
house.
if it were residential, it would be that way anyway. If it were not by
I-
right.
you know what,
I
I-
understand. I understand your point.
It would be different kind of traffic.
And I'll let you continue talking now.
Can I just say one thing again? I don't mean to interrupt. And I will ask the applicant clearly, please keep the whole 6 acres as a park and make it a beautiful park, but he's not going to listen to me.
Okay, well,
So, I mean, he has that right to do the buses there anyway.
he doesn't, to bring it to Grove
He
Street?
has that right, he owns the property, he could do that. If you were
I
to
really
do
think
that,
I think you should do a safety report before you should go down there. I mean, you're making decisions for a community.
I think you make some good points on that safety stuff, and that's why I asked you
Look,
to bring in
I'm
what you
there,
requested from the
and my
police
children are grown. I'm thinking of my grandchildren, and I watch these little kids, and I have to tell you, my heart's in my mouth already. We're not even talking about a whole slew of kids. I think if you build 51 townhouses and you put in an area for buses of loading and unloading, you will alleviate a tremendous,
I do want you to
tremendous
know,
problem.
Esther, that is Grove Street is an area that Councilman Ullman, who works on the sidewalk committee, has talked about that, having sidewalks on Grove Street. So
Grove Street,
it is something
Grove
we
Street
realize.
already
that's
has sidewalks. And
by-
you're
by-
not
by-
even...
by Saddle River, yeah.
Grove Street has sidewalks. Now visualize this. The school bus is coming, dropping off kids. The boys are
not the
biking
whole-
down the road on their bikes. And visualize the narrow Grove Street, the narrow street. And there's no easement where the St. Zitas is. And Hatzalah is running up the hill. And Route 59 traffic is already diverted. And from Augusta, you have all the traffic flowing in, and there's a yeshiva there too, and there's a yeshiva in Grove with 100 boys walking back and forth. Just come down and have a look. I was on 59 today. The traffic I wanted to see if I'm right, or maybe I'm just being prejudiced. Maybe I like my residential area. There was traffic from Grove Street, from Remsen Avenue, almost down to Augusta, past Glen Hill. Do you know that? How's someone supposed to get through? I don't know what to tell you.
Well, you've made good points there.
Okay, now the park. Let's go to the park. Okay, I saw the plans for the park. They're mostly hidden behind an existing building. I think you need to look into it carefully. That's not a park. That's a little hole in the wall, and it's not going to service anybody, and they're going to be able to say, well, we did our civic duty. I don't buy it. I think you need 51 normal-sized townhouses. You need a pickup and a drop-off for children. You need a park for children. This needs to be done with some safety. Not foisted on people who don't want it. We don't want stores there. I didn't even get to the stores. The noise, the business is open till all hours. You know where you mentioned the school across 59, it used to be a restaurant? Every night we fell asleep to their music. Who's going to guarantee that there won't be a restaurant with a jukebox? Will you guarantee it? If it makes financial sense, we'll rent it to whoever pays us the highest price. Now, I moved here 42 years ago. My husband's here about 65 years. The neighborhood is totally different. I'm not against growth, and I'm not against children. I love them dearly. I hope I made myself clear.
You do.
But I need a little peace of mind. When I come home, I need to be able to get into my driveway, out of my driveway. I don't want to worry about the safety of children. I don't want to breathe the smells of those delivery trucks. I don't want to hear the garbage trucks removing garbage. I don't want the music at night. I hope I made my point clear.
You
Thank
don't
you.
mind growth, you want some SACO put in there so that it's better than it was before.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and who else would like to speak? Sir? Come right up. State your name and address for our clerk, please.
My name is Daniel Philipson.
You can just bend that down so then they'll be able to hear you. That's it, thank you.
Daniel Philipson. I live on 12 Augusta Avenue. As Ms. Tillum spoke, we've been talking about this with all the neighbors. There are quite a few points that we are worried about, and I would like to add. First, just to add to what she was saying and what the supervisor was saying, on the narrow Grove Street, on a narrow Augusta, is the main artery that any EMS volunteer, whether it's Atzola or whether it's the fire volunteers, fly down numerous times a day on their private cars to get to the fire station and Atzola garage. If that's blocked by school buses or by the delivery trucks for 20 stores, how are they going to get through? Apart from that, there's no sidewalks at the moment on Augusta. And as the councilman said, there's no sidewalks on a quarter of Grove Street. At the moment, it's extremely difficult for a residential car, a private car, to get through any of these areas, especially since there's now become a yeshiva on Grove Street. As the supervisor said, they were saying 200 extra bedrooms. If we would keep to the original plan, that would be lovely. But the amount of children that would take, competing now with 20 stores worth of trucks, delivery trucks that have to service these stores, it's unavoidable. And even if, according to the new plan, if you have elderly people who are going to be in these caretaker apartments or children, there's going to be fatal accidents, God forbid, in such an area. It has to be either or. It cannot be both. With garbage trucks, I mean, no one has to explain to anyone here how commercial trucks and garbage trucks drive. Put them in the same equation as kids, we're looking for an accident. So far, as he said, we don't have a traffic report apart from it being an F. The only way that can go, if we add commercial trucks, is going to be till we get to Z. It's not going to go up, especially once there's going to be, at the end of the day, 3 three private projects there. As we have Glenhill Estates, this one we're talking about, and then on the other side of Augusta, corner 59, there's coming another 45 units. To add, that is what's permitted, as the councilman said. He can do that. But you're going to add to that commercialization and all the delivery trucks. There's 59, there is only a one-lane road. However wide it is, however, even as the main artery, you can't overtake there, you can't swerve around. So I think, which, as Ms. Tillum said, and as our 200 petitioners have said, leave it as it is. The other thing is, as neighbors who are going to live there, who live there now, we would like to have some input, some idea what's happening. We don't get to see any of the papers that the council board gets to see. This is the first time we're looking at these boards here, and I think they should have some meetings with the neighbors to hear what they want to, let's call it, push through, or what they want to achieve, and let them have some of our input as well, as we are the ones who live there, and we're the ones who have our kids running around on the streets at the moment with no sidewalks, and they should let us be in the picture as well.
Thank you, Daniel. And you make a very good point, and there will be more public input too in the planning board if this were to go forward, if they change to MU zone, because there'd be a whole site plan and there'd be more reach out. But I think it's a good idea, and I think the applicants are here and can hear you about reaching out to the community a little bit more. I just want to clarify one thing that you said. You said this 59 was a one-lane road, but actually the Augusta is a one lane in each direction, but 59 actually has 3 lanes there. There's a turning lane in front of this property that takes you down to Augusta, because I use it quite often.
That's correct, yes.
There's a center lane.
There's still just
that
two
is-
lanes, one on each side.
Well, it's one on each side, but then there is a third lane in the middle. So if there were a signalized light there, there is already a lane there to make that left turn on the light.
Also,
to queue up the traffic.
just to make a correction, the traffic study submitted by the applicant doesn't say all the relevant intersections are F. It rates different intersections in different ways. So it's not everything is an F. That's not what the traffic study says.
I don't think there is a letter.
It is important that you get that information, and so you can delve into it too.
Okay,
Thank you, Daniel.
I'm sorry, maybe Lenny, maybe Mr. Jackson, no, I'm sorry. Mr. Jackson, maybe Mike could come. I'm here looking at the Google Earth view. Where exactly is the water tower? I know the water tower is right on Grove.
The water tower is closer to Remsen. It's on the north side of Grove, and it's on the almost the extreme western portion of Grove. It's up on the plateau there, close to the intersection of Grove and Remsen. Okay. Anyone else? Bruce, come right up.
And Bruce, before you say anything, I know you've been a big advocate for small unit rentals. I'm not saying here, I'm saying in general in the county.
I am.
I've heard you numerous times, so.
Yeah,
This
absolutely.
I think is good. I'm not saying this project,
Yeah.
I'm saying the idea of 2-bedroom rentals.
I'm not saying not this project either. So, first of all, name and address. Bruce Levine, 9 Robin Hood Road, Montebello, New York, 10901, speaking for myself. I want to talk about certain kind of... Sure, I live in...
9 Robin Hood
in Montebello.
in Montebello.
In Montebello. I grew up on Maple Avenue. People might know who I am. But
Maple and Jeffries in that vicinity, wasn't it?
Herrick.
I mean Herrick, excuse me, Herrick.
Someone knows.
Just down the next block.
Yeah.
You're right.
So I want to address some general points from a general public point of view, even beyond the neighbors. The notice for this meeting stated merely that there was a local law amending zoning to change the zoning map. It didn't say where. It didn't say what. There was no public. There was no. You have no place on your website to have notices of public hearings, which virtually all the other municipalities in Rockland County have. There was no way of knowing what this was.
Wait,
when-
the notice of public, that's not correct.
No, you're talking about in the newspaper. You're talking about in the newspaper, the Rockland County Times.
The legally required notices identify specifically the parcels and the location.
The agenda for this meeting, which went up maybe Friday, was not there, as far as I know, Thursday, which people like me look at.
And the notices that went to all the required people in the
they-
neighborhood all
they
identified
got
the
it,
specific
But
parcel.
the general public didn't. The general public didn't. And anytime there's any change to the master plan, the general public is entitled to know.
Well, I think that's why we
And-
put it in our official newspaper, the Rockland County Times, so the
Rockland County
general
Times-
public can read it.
As you know, Rock County Times doesn't reach most people in this town. Your website is available 24/7, and I suggest you put it in. I think your meeting notices, which many people do look at to see what's on, should at least identify what the hearing is about. Secondly, there was one misstatement made by Councilman Ullman. In the MR8 zone,
Only one?
I was about to say that, but Bruce
ahead.
is being nice to me today.
I wouldn't say that. I'm trying,
Bruce is
gotta
always
be a
nice
mensch.
to me. Come on, let's not ruin this.
An MR8 zone is up, or MR16 or MR12, whatever it is, it's up to a certain number of units. It doesn't actually require all of those units. That's a planning decision, whether the property can handle that many units. If you actually look at the law, it does not say someone is entitled to build that number of the units. And that's a crucial distinction that's made. So when people are telling you things like, people are saying, well, they're entitled to do this, and they're asking for that, that's something you should be aware is not actually in your own law, and nor should it be. Nor should it be, because every parcel is going to be different. I do want to say that I actually do think there is a need for two-bedroom units in this community and every other community in the town, and I don't have a problem with that, and I don't have a philosophical problem with the idea of commercial as well. What I was concerned about when I first looked 5 minutes before the meeting at a map is the lack of buffers, really. It looked to me like there was on this property. And I think these are major decisions that you have to make when you hear the discussions of noise and everything else. And the traffic flows, I can tell you how those traffic studies do work. They say, okay, if this place has 10,000 cars and it's only going to have another 100 cars, well, then it's not a significant change, right? And that's sort of ignoring the reality of what's happening there. So, because.
But you would agree that if an intersection like Glen Hill that doesn't have a signal there and makes it difficult, putting a signal can improve it.
Well, as you know, I favored Glen Hill but thought it should be downsized, and spoke to that in front of, I think, this board. But certainly the planning board. I don't remember which board I spoke to.
No,
It
the
must have been the
planning
planning board. It must have been the planning board. And I spoke to that issue of the concern about the size of that and the closeness of the units and everything else.
Well, you mentioned just a minute ago, Bruce, about the buffers. And
Yeah.
I think in Ira's presentation, he mentioned that they increased the buffers to 80 feet in the back. But wouldn't you agree, though, that the way they have it set up, which is interesting, that they juxtapose the commercial toward 59 and the residential toward the back, in a way that kind of buffers it to a certain degree?
Well, that's not the kind of buffers I was talking about.
I know what you're talking about. You're talking about trees and things.
I'm not talking about parking lots.
I know,
I'm not
but I
talking
was
about
just making that point.
Yeah, and that's actually, which brings up another point. Even if you like this project just the way it is, you need to at least study the internal configurations in terms of the children going through those parking lots to get to the parks and so on, and figure out how that's going to work. But I think that it is important.
But you were talking about physical, but I know what you were talking about. You were talking about buffers between the neighborhood, the existing
I'm talking about
neighborhood.
trees, so you don't get noise, you don't get these things. And I think one of the questions that are raised by the residents, which I do agree with, is that is a question of the studies of this. When these things happen the way they are happening, I don't know when they got if they got notice of the original petition. They got notice of this item on this agenda approximately 2 weeks ago or so, as I understand, maybe more, 3 weeks ago, something like that. And that's the first time they're getting access to it. But the original item here goes back to last summer, based on documents that were obtained, goes back to July 30th, 2012. And it seems to me that the neighbors should have been notified immediately of it, as well as, by the way, surrounding villages, in terms of any impact on Route 59 is going to affect everyone on Route 59. Right now, if you're coming west,
East or west?
if you're coming west, and when you hit 59 and 306, you have this huge traffic. Once you're past that, you pretty much get up to Remsen quickly. That's just the reality. It's always been the reality. If you're going to put a traffic light here, you have to study that. And I think perhaps what you ought to do, since it doesn't sound like you made a determination, negative or positive, is make a positive declaration. Set the what you need to study. You probably don't need to study everything, but you know you have traffic, you know you have noise, you know you have safety issues. I mean, you know that there's going to be there could be air pollution issues. I don't know. It depends on what's being done. But I think that if you did that, that would give everybody time to do it. In other words, when you're thinking about a zone change, it doesn't have to be rushed through. I realize that the project goes back a year, but from the public's point of view, the project may only be a few weeks old. And there's not a reason to rush it, which is one of the general issues that I think it's really important that you consider over time and make sure that everybody has the information in a way that they can analyze it, get their own experts if they want to participate in it, consider possibilities, alternatives, all the things that happen in a normal process. I have grave concerns about what the DOT thinks about, the entrances to this project, and I think that's one of the questions. And I'm not a big fan of MR8 or MR12 in these areas. I wasn't a big fan of the level of density that occurred in Glen Hill Estates, I guess it is, right? Or I'm probably not saying it right. But I do think that that project should have been much better studied for a much longer period. And I think this project needs to have at least some kind of study. So a lot of it may have already been done, but some opportunity for people to participate in that process, including general citizens. There are a lot of people in this town that are concerned about it. When you make a change to the zoning map, there are those who believe that a amendment to the master plan is necessary. And if the point here is to do a study as to the need of two-bedroom units, that may be something legitimate to consider. Last point I want to make, because I don't want to keep you, because I hope you're going to keep this hearing open at least, or set it back to do a positive declaration and then start that process going. But I want to make one more point. I have been correctly, and I duly note that I have been correctly corrected, that a municipality is entitled, at least to some extent, to condition a zone change. So if you want a park, you don't have to think only in terms of land in lieu of money in lieu of land in, getting the land directly is for the project. You have the ability to condition the zone change on the basis of that. I know you do, but you haven't mentioned it. And
Well,
I know it was done in other places.
We mentioned what our desires are.
Right, exactly. And the last thing I want to say beyond that is that to the extent that you are always, to the extent that every time you have an opportunity to change a zone to do any kind of residential, I wish you'd consider requiring at least 10% or some number of units to be affordable in the traditional way, meaning not workforce, I mean affordable housing with means tests and some restrictions on sale or rental price and so on, the normal true affordable housing. I think that's vastly necessary throughout the town, and certainly in the unincorporated area. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bruce.
Can I just address two things?
Sure.
Bruce, two things. First, I want to thank you for coming down. I know you don't live right in that area, so it's probably a little, it's hard for everyone to come down, especially people work, people are busy. But I know you don't live right there, and you came all the way down from Montebello, so I appreciate that. Regarding the number of units, thanks for clarifying that. I'm not an attorney, so I'm going to agree with you. I didn't even ask Michael. In this particular project, the county agrees with the number of units that it's appropriate over there. Regarding the postings, the letter of the law, there's no argument that we did keep that, but I get what you're saying. And with the supervisor's guidance, I have been actually working on something to do for the website. In fact, there's a company coming down, and we're interviewing together with, Chris Sampson's involved and other town board members, where we're actually going to be able to access not only the agenda items, but you could actually click in and see our paperwork that we get, all the backup materials, as well as a search feature. Instead of just opening PDFs, you actually have to type in an issue and search any resolution that was done in the, as long as we're using the system, you'll be able to pull it all up. We're working on that. I want to say the end of the year, we'll have it up, but I don't want to give deadlines for that. And if Mr. Romanowski heard me on the radio today on WRCR 1300, our town official radio station, I discussed it a little bit more and talked in detail about that.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, good evening. My name is Miriam Kaufman, 5 Augusta Avenue. And
Just for the record, this is my first cousin.
yes, hi. It's nice to meet you here. Okay, so
Don't throw anything at him. Go ahead.
first of all, you keep talking about the buffers to 59 and Grove Street.
You want me to hold that sign up?
No, that's fine. It's fine. The buffers between 59 and Grove Street. I also, if we're talking about buffers, I appreciate what Mr. Levine said. A buffer to Augusta Avenue, to my backyard, would be very much in place. So right now, I never ever close my backyard windows, and I face the trees, and I saw the deer tonight. Of course, we're asking for a buffer to Augusta Avenue too. Right now, my backyard windows would face a parking lot. Right over here is my house, and we're talking about parking lots, cars, headlights, etc.
So you have behind your house, you have trees right now going up toward that
exactly.
line.
So when you're talking about the buffer, I'm asking for that too. But the main
Okay.
point is Mrs. Tillam's point and Mr. Phillipson's point of not mixing commercial and residential. And if you're doing studies and you're analyzing traffic studies and everything else, how many existing buildings are there out there that have commercial and residential mixed? Has a study been made of 54 units of two-bedroom homes with 2-year-olds, 4-year-olds, and delivery trucks? It just doesn't make sense.
I think every traditional town in the state of New York has commercial and the first floor and apartments on the second floor. Every
Can you give an
downtown-
example in Muncie, Spring
Well,
Valley?
Suffern, Muncie.
Like what?
In Muncie, we have a project there by Horizon and the amazing Savings, which is going to be commercial, and then apartments up above. But where I grew up in the village of Suffern, every one of those offices and shops have people living up above them. I mean, I think that is a traditional way that people live.
That's the real concern here. And yes, it's true, Route 59 is commercial, and if they're going to have commercial, it should look something like the Tuvia's strip mall, or the Planet Fitness, whatever it's called, or the Walmart, a one-story that takes...
Well, I hope it has better traffic flow than the Planet Fitness. That's
whatever,
not a good
that takes
example
in
yet.
mind
Yeah.
all the residential neighborhood nearby, the delivery trucks, et cetera. And if you're doing commercial, do it with the neighborhood in mind. And if you're not, and if you're doing the residential, then the same thing. We're talking about the density, et cetera. As far as the traffic study, I can do the traffic study for you because I live right at the corner, and it's constantly backed up from Remsen Avenue all the way to Augusta Avenue. This is without the 189 condominiums going up on Glen Hill. There's only that 12 families that moved in so far. So we haven't had them coming out yet from the Joshua Court Glen Hill entrance. They haven't entered 59 yet. Remember, 12 cars are only there. We're talking about 180 units, I think. Then, right across the street from me, they just started bulldozing the forest, and we're going to have 45 units with rentals probably as well, and they're all emptying out onto Augusta Avenue, want to go to Walmart.
Well, hopefully we're going to have, we are putting in, we have taken over from the railroad company, the railroad tracks there,
Right.
and we're going to be putting in a walkway from Glen Hill underneath 59
Right.
through that New Meadows.
Right, that'll be beautiful, but
and
it's
that will
not-
take you right over to Klein's
Right.
Market and right into.
It's going to be gorgeous, I
That
know
will be.
about that, but the cars...
I mean, what it will do is we'll take the ability for people to have walkability there rather than getting in a car and driving out and around to get into
Right.
the shopping area. So
That
I
makes
think
sense
that
for
will
those
make
who walk.
will make a lot of
For
sense.
the strollers, but the cars and the school buses can't use the walkway, so it doesn't help. And they're all emptying out on Augusta Avenue. We begged, we pleaded that those Meadows East or whatever should have had another exit.
You're at 5 Augusta, so you're on the
Direct-
west side?
Directly across the street
Yeah,
from the
okay.
from the Meadows East. And
From
that
Meadow
entire-
East entrance.
Exactly, and
Okay.
that entrance, exit, you name it.
Yeah,
So they're all going to
yeah,
empty
right.
there, and if they want to go to Walmart and they want to go to Tuvio's, they are going onto the same roadway. How could it not be affecting the traffic study? How could there be no significant impact unless you're just interpreting as nothing lower than an F? We're not going down to Z, that's why there's no impact. F equals F equals F. Doesn't make sense, it's obvious. And,
So you want us to look at the levels at that intersection as
yeah,
well?
it
I
has to be
understand.
studied. You could widen 59, maybe you should make it into a 5-lane highway, I don't know. But please look into it carefully, thank you very much.
And the buffers as well. Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Come right up, sir. And then you'll be next, okay? And then you're third.
My name is Moshe Schwab. I have to apologize. I wasn't here all evening. And I hear, look into it this way. I say, throw it out. Get rid of this project. The neighbors don't want it. None of the neighbors go up and down the block. The neighbors don't want it. Have the neighbors, these are the votes, and these are the people that count. That's the bread and butter of this town, is your neighborhood. And if you got to take the consideration of the neighbors, and if you go up and down the block and you see the neighbors don't want, that's it. Nobody has to make money on our backs.
No, you're throwing the Constitution out with that statement, though. People have constitutional rights.
We have a lawyer
People have
here.
property rights in this country.
But
and
there is the
they
neighbor.
pay taxes. The owner of this property is paying taxes on that property presently. But that people have property rights, and they.
But we're asking for
request-
something not in the property rights. We're asking for change. So we're asking as neighbors, leave it in the neighborhood that
Mr.
which we
Schwab, I
purchased.
understand what you're saying, but as you said, you missed the first part of the presentation. But I mean, they have property rights where they could build something there, and they
Okay,
want to build.
keep it in the
something
property
over there.
rights.
Okay.
And we're asking, keep it in the properties. Don't downzone it worse than it is already. Like you say, we have...
This isn't a down zone. It's a change.
It's a change
from an
zone. It's
MR
worse than
to
a down
to an
zone,
MU.
maybe.
Correct.
It may be worse than the down zone.
Mr. Schwab, are you at 5 Treetop?
Yes, sir. I'm living in this county 53 years. It's going to be 54 years. And we saw a lot of changes, and change also has a gvul. Change has a boundary. And let's try to keep it. You said before, the honorable supervisor said before, traditionally all towns, traditionally, those that were built in 1900s. 2013, usually, a town doesn't pride itself with having people living atop of stores.
I disagree with you. I'll tell you. I'm on the Tappan Zee Mass Transit Task Force, and in Westchester and the whole 287 corridor, they are proposing to where they have the Platinum Mile, where there are commercial buildings and office buildings, and they're not being rented as much. Westchester County is changing in this process and going to make housing in those areas, in those parking lots. They're going to rip up parking lots. They're going to make it walkability. They're going to put in commercial and housing in those parking lots where there are office buildings. Walkability and sustainability and having mixed use is the way of the 21st century as well. It's not the 1900s.
Can I ask you, on a busy street this happens?
They're doing it on 287, on Westchester Avenue, on the Platinum Mile.
But 287, cars don't go on to the 287 from private streets.
No, I'm talking about in that 287 corridor, the Platinum Mile there where Westchester Avenue is. They are going to rework that concept of just having office buildings there and make it more of a livable community where people can walk and live and do some shopping there, as well as going to work there. Well, large families or small families?
Honorable Supervisor, I
Yes,
see
sir.
you pushing the project.
I'm not pushing the
Evidently, you're
project.
pushing the project.
I'm not pushing the
because the way you're talking, the tone of your voice is you're pushing the project, and that's it.
Mr. Schwab, I'm not pushing the project, but I just don't want people to come up and say, just throw everything out and don't do it, because people have constitutional rights.
Okay.
And I just, when people make statements and say that Route 59 is just a single-lane road, no, it's a three-lane road. I just was trying to make the record straight and whole.
I could just tell you it didn't sound that way.
No,
Sorry.
I'm going to finish now.
Okay.
Because too many times in this town, people keep repeating something that isn't true, and then people start to believe it is true. And so I just wanted to set that record straight with you, that we don't just throw things out. We discuss them. They've come before us. We do a planning process. Whatever this board decides on a zone change will mean it only goes to the next board, where there'll be more public input and more consideration on the actual site approval. And then that the DOT will make their recommendations after the process goes along. I'm not saying that at all. Do I think that when people say this is a residential neighborhood, I just have to say Route 59 is not a residential neighborhood. It is a commercial strip of Rockland County. It was built so that the goods from the western portion of the town could get over into the seaport areas along the Hudson River. So that is the tradition of the area.
So keep it commercial. Keep it commercial. Mixing this business of mixing tenants and apartments and into our backyards. We have now a building, and you know good and well, yeshiva that was put up without. We spoke to you about it, but in 4 o'clock.
Time out.
4 o'clock in the morning.
Made the statement to how could you put a yeshiva, a school in a
when you were
residential
called,
neighborhood?
the supervisor was called.
In New York State. Their desire in New York State is to put schools in residential.
But they didn't have a permit for that. It was built as a single-family house,
Well,
and the
when-
town was alerted that it's not a single-family house.
When those things happen, this town board takes actions. Our building department take actions. And if those actions aren't followed, then we go to the Supreme Court and we get injunctions, and we make sure
I have
that
to ask the supervisor to look at the record and see. My sister-in-law lives right across the street, and call the supervisor's office. But that's neither here or there right now. It's supervisor's office, and nothing was done. But right now, we're asking to have the neighborhood in mind.
Somebody called my office about an illegal school, and
Yes.
Well, you're wrong.
Yes.
You're wrong.
Yes.
You're wrong.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes. We can have the first.
Schwab.
What?
No.
Okay, I'm just telling you it's true.
It's not true.
Okay.
If any complaint would come in about an illegal school, the proper
Illegal building. It wasn't a school yet.
Illegal
It was a building that was put up. It looked exactly like a yeshiva.
Mr. Schwab, if there's any illegal building, school or building, it's not something that comes to my office anyway.
Well,
it
you were
goes
called.
to the building department.
You were called.
Well, then,
Your office
and I'm
was
sure it
called.
was referred to the building department.
Okay.
It's not in the purview of the supervisor to make a decision on the occupancy of any building. It's the purview of the building inspector in the town of Ramos.
100%.
Now that you brought it to the attention, could you give me the address so that I can make sure the building department takes care of it tomorrow?
It was.
I need the address. I need the address.
They changed. They went.
If there's a complaint, I'll bring it to the building department.
The complaint is that nobody took care of it. That's what it is. Right now, it's standing and it's done. It's done. It's a yeshiva. It's done. The complaint is that it was brought to the attention of the officials of this town, and nothing was done. It was on deaf ears. On deaf ears. And properties went down. It was on deaf ears. And I asked you to...
I will tell you what I will do, Mr.
Good.
Schwab.
Thank you.
I will find out when the building department was notified of the property you're talking about, and I will find out when they took action on it. I will guarantee you it was immediate.
Okay. Can we check up? Can we...
I will check up on that.
Okay.
For you. Yeah.
What? You can ask Edel called. Yeah. Okay. I asked again.
I'll find out when the building department I'll find out when the building department became aware of it and what actions they took. And I'm telling you,
they
right
had
now,
many
so
hearings
immediate.
afterwards. And they made up with the neighbors to build. Right now, it's over. It's already approved and everything. It's gone. It's done already. But we're asking the supervisor and the honorable board to put yourself in our position. If you lived on Treetop Lane, you lived on Grove Street, would you want it in your backyard? If the answer is no, then give us the same treatment you would give yourself. If the answer is yes, then do your studies but we're asking as neighbors that we would like to keep it. The neighborhood has changed so drastically. Everything has, everything has a border. And I think we're passing, so to speak, a line. And let's not pass that line. Let's keep it what Muncie looked like It's not, Muncie didn't look like this, and doesn't look anymore like that. But let's at least try to imagine that we're still living in a country setting, in a nice, quiet, where you don't wake up 4 o'clock in the morning because the guy's delivering the milk. You don't wake up because the garbage truck has to come early in the morning. And you don't hear all the beeping until late at night. You could go to sleep at a normal hour. You can sleep late. You can relax on a Sunday without the noise of the city. That's why we moved here, and that's why we live here. And we appreciate your concern, and I have to apologize if I pressed a few wrong buttons. We'll be friends in 10 minutes.
Nothing to apologize for.
Okay.
I would go down Grove Street with my father way before you were here, and go down to the cement plant down there where Horizon is, and now that's beautiful housing.
I remember
there.
your father, rest in peace. He came to when they started he was in New City. He was the county clerk, right?
The county treasurer
and treasurer.
assembly
And
person.
then when they started the school board, when things started to get, he came, he spoke, and he wanted to have school in the summer in order to save money. I remember him. Short fella, I remember him. I remember his speech even. This was maybe 35 years ago, when Sanford Fellow ran for the president of the school board. Remember?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, so he came to that meeting. It was in B'nai Jeshua, the shul on Park Avenue. I was at that meeting. So you're an old timer. Try to keep this with old style, please.
Thank you, Mr. Schwab.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, let's let everybody speak first, and then you can come back up and you can speak again, Marie. Yes. And anybody else that wants to speak again, once we go through everyone.
Okay.
Just state your name and address, please.
My name is Daniela Sabo. I live on 19 Pennington Way in Spring Valley. I'm a real estate broker that serves northern New Jersey and Rockland area. Over the last 10 years, I've seen a lot of condos go up in Rampo and around. And this whole condo boom was due to the fact that it was easy to get mortgages and people wanted to buy, and there was a tremendous supply and demand for this, and a lot of condos were built. But now, as we all know, that's not the case anymore. And when people are given the choice between buying and renting, a lot of people are turning to renting now, as they cannot get the mortgages that they used to be able to get. And it's very important that Ramapo help out all those people that need rentals because they can't afford to buy a home. I have some statistics here from the Joint Center for Housing Studies at Harvard. They published a paper that stated that 25 to 34-year-olds accounted for 645,000 new renter households between 2006 and 2011. But back in 2001 and 2006, they lost 328,000 renters. So as you see, right now there's a much higher demand for young couples who are starting with their first jobs and, trying to keep up, and they can't afford to have a house, but they need these renters. What I want to highlight is that the renters are very important. Rentals in our town, we're the single largest demographic in this town is 20 to 35-year-olds. And if you add in the seniors that have empty nest syndrome and try to get out of their houses and want to downgrade, they make up 46% of our entire town. And they need a place to go. And they need a place that they can go and rent. If we want our town to grow and retain jobs, keep our families in Ramapo, we desperately need this rental housing. There's simply no options for these people in our town. Besides that, these stores will bring additional jobs and may help out. It will create a much-needed rental housing and ultimately keep the future of Ramapo right here at home. I wanted to point out two things. Firstly, the old 51 units that was under the MR8 doesn't allow for rentals, and we need the rentals. And again, people desperately need these two-bedroom rentals for when they're starting out their lives and they don't have the money yet to buy, and for the older people that they have a place to go and to downsize, and they're able to rent it and not have to buy it.
Thank you very much.
Danielle, would you spell your last name, please?
SABO.
Cool, thank you.
And that's 19 Pennington Way.
I got it.
Okay. And come right up, and then the lady, you're next, okay? And then you'll get to come up for another shot at it.
Hi, my name is Joel Carpin. I live on 2 Rose Garden Way. That's off Glen Hill. That's the new development on Glen Hill Road.
What way did you live?
That's 2 Rose Garden Way. That's a new road. That's a new project, Glen Hill.
Your last name is
Carpin.
Rose Garden.
K-A-R?
K-A-R-P-E-N.
Carvin?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I think there was enough said about about the reasons opposing the commercialization of the property. But I just want to make a few short points. The supervisor proposed the town park should be built behind the lot. Yeah, there's a big park right across. That's Glen Hill Park, Glen Hill County Park, and there's enough. It's enough for us that the property is being commercialized and more traffic and all the stuff that we talked about, but more taxes because there's new parks. That's not needed anymore. If the property owner wants to build a park, should build on his own expense and not expense on the taxpayers, who would pay eventually for the park. Am I correct?
Well, no, we're actually asking the applicant to give us the park, the land for the park,
So
and
the
then
town will receive a park, and the town will keep up the park.
the town
So
would then
it will cost more.
would keep up the park, and you know the county park is a much more passive park there, as you may know.
Yeah.
It's got deep
But
ravines
it
there.
will be the cost of the town to keep up the park.
Absolutely, we
Yes.
keep up all of our parks.
So
That's what we do as a town, provide that service.
We in Rose Garden Way, in the Glen Hill project, we build the park, and it's our cost to keep up.
In some
It's not-
areas in the town, it is the cost
Yeah.
of the development.
But I mean, if he wants to build a park, or he needs to build a park, it should be on his own expense and on his own expense.
Well, he does in the plan, he shows a park, what he wants to build is that green
So
area there.
let's leave it like that.
But,
Not-
well,
not
we
take it on the
think
town.
it should be a bigger park.
Yeah. But I mean, there's a downside to the town takes up the park, the upkeep of the park, because it costs more for the town to. There's more taxes if the taxes aren't enough high. We're not of the lowest brackets of taxation in this country.
If we made that into a park, you're correct, that would no longer be on the tax rolls as a single-family house in a 15A zone.
No, but I mean
And then there would be the cost of the park.
cost of the upkeep of the park.
Really, on the pocket parks, the cost is somewhat diminished. We have a lot of pocket parks, whether it's Besson Park, or we just put one in on West Central Avenue that used to be an old retention basin, and we put in a park there because it was needed, and one on Blauvelt, we're putting one in. So the land is always the biggest cost there. As far as maintaining it, the swings, as long as they keep working, they may need to be repaired here and there, or maybe some trimming of some brush or some grass, but it's more de minimis. We have a pretty good parks maintenance department that, travels around and
Okay.
does that. But I understand what you're saying. That is an ongoing cost.
Yeah. And I think there was talk about the traffic report, and I think there was an option of putting a traffic signal on the intersection of Glen Hill Road and Route 59.
I believe wherever, it's a state highway, so the
Yeah.
state would make that ultimate decision on the signalization, but I think that was where those things juxtapose, where they line
and
up.
the cost for this traffic light is this new development? This two
The
new
developer
developments?
would pay for the traffic light
Yeah, but-
as part of the project, if it were to go through.
I think would be a very, such a comfortable traffic light, because there's a very steep hill down. It's very hard to stop. It's not so easy to stop there.
How is it coming out of Rose Garden there?
Yeah.
It's a little
No,
difficult.
it would be easier for me to come out of Glen Hill Road without a traffic light. It will only make the whole traffic system more...
If you're making a right to go into Muncie, it's easy, but I
Yes.
guess making a left, it's a little bit more
Yeah.
difficult.
And I happen to drive on Augusta Road, Augusta Lane, what's called, and the last few months, it's a very dangerous, curvy road, whoever's been there. And now you're adding two huge developments. There's one 45 units and one in 56 units, 54, 51, depends who you ask. So it's a very dangerous situation. It's a very narrow, curvy road, correct?
Mm-hmm.
It seems to be a little problem. And as I think Mr. Bruce said, that the families in Glen Hill have not moved in yet. So there's 12 families, and it's actually another 80 coming. So the traffic is not yet where it's up of the current developments. Like according to the current developments, the full, it's not fully accommodated that the traffic can be measured.
But I don't know if you were here when they spoke to this. Mr. Jackson spoke to it, and I think Mr. Emanuel spoke to the fact that they took into consideration all of those developments in the traffic study. So,
Oh, so that, okay. And just a side note, the sidewalks can be added. If there's a new residential property, there's a much needed sidewalks that has to be put in place. It's
And
only
you're
one
talking
side,
about
and it's
on
only half the road. On both sides, actually needed. And the
you mean on 59?
yeah, on Route 59. And about the project of converting the railway into a pathway, I think that's already like 2 decades in the planning.
Believe me, it's not easy dealing with railroad companies. They have some really strong rights in this country. As a matter of fact, this town was suing the railroad companies because they didn't want to pay taxes anymore. As a matter of fact, we were in Supreme Court in White Plains when Mr. Pataki made a deal with Mr. Snow from CSX, who later became the Secretary of Transportation for this country, and they made all railroad properties exempt from our taxes. We used to correct taxes, correct, Mike?
Retroactive for years.
Retroactive for years. So railroad companies are difficult to deal with. We have been dealing with the railroad company on that property, and we now have the ability to submit to them a plan for the walkway as long as it meets their approval. So we've come a long way on that, and I think our town attorney has Aaron Trudler assigned to that, and we're getting much closer to having that walkway go all the way over to Klein's Fish Market.
Yeah,
We're
very
trying
much
to
needed.
devise
Now-
a way to get across Route 306 safely so that people could continue on the walkway all the way over to Shoppers Haven.
Yes. Did the supervisor say that it was already acquired the property of the railway?
We have acquired the rights from
to
the
do-
railroad company to do this, subject to their considerations of the plan that we put.
So we still have to deal with the
Yeah,
railway company.
I think we're always going to have to deal with them. So they are. It's not the only place we're dealing with them. We're dealing with Norfolk Southern and along from the walkway we're putting in around Poe River, along the western portion of the town, from Suffern to Hilburn, and from behind the Sharp in New Jersey. We're taking over the Norfolk railroad tracks there, and it is difficult. But we've made great advances on the Glen Hill on that
Hope so.
project. So you'll see some things shortly, I believe.
Okay, thank you.
Hi.
Hi, my
Hi.
name is Miriam Schwab. I live on 5 Street, Dublin.
Are you related to Moshe Schwab?
Oh, yeah. Of course.
The feisty one? Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, a couple things I have to mention.
Yes.
Number one, Treetop and I've lived there for ever since. It's a very quiet place. It's very calm. It's very, you just feel like you're in the country. Everybody comes from the city. They feel like they can just walk out in their pajamas. It's just a quiet, good, nice place to live. So I feel that by us putting, you know, those trucks and those bang, bang, I mean,
Dumpsters.
yeah, those dumpsters. And my parents are getting old, so for me to put those dumpsters on their, you know, they're gonna wake up at night and they
And maybe they could live to be 120.
I mean, but I'm telling you, now my neighbors are old, and you can't do this to them. They're old, and they need their sleep, and they need to live, and they need to see their grandchildren, and you have to understand that they've lived there for so long, and they use their quiet place, and they just enjoy themselves, and they're living in their old age calmly, and So for you to go and disrupt their calmness and disrupt their elderly life or whatever, going into their life, it's just so mean. It's so unfair and so, like, it's just not fair. And as much as hopefully I'm gonna get married soon and I'm not gonna live there, I still care. I care for my parents. I care for them. I care for my parents. I care for my neighbors, my friends. And yeah, we do. We have some young kids. But they know to be quiet. They know that on Saturday afternoon, they have to be quiet because the neighbors are sleeping. It was like that since I was little. Neighbors are sleeping from 2 to 4 on Saturday, you're quiet. And that's just the way it is. So for us to have this noise and this bang and all this retardedness on our back,
There's no bang, bang.
bang, bang, whatever it is, I don't care. It's just, and traffic and noise and honking. I mean, I was born in a country, not in a city. And even if I don't live there too much longer, I still care. Because I'm going to go back for all the time. So please, please keep that in mind. Number 2, Augusta Avenue is pitch black. We have to walk there on Saturday night from my grandmother's house because unfortunately she's unwell and we have to take care of her. And we walk there with her wheelchair and it's pitch black. Pitch! You don't see a thing, not a car, nothing. And now cars come zooming in down from Grove Street into Augusta. And mind you, they make a wide turn. So they take both. Today I was almost in an accident. I was going down Augusta, a car came in, it's too narrow. I flew my car to the side and I was on somebody else's grass. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't have a light. It's dark, it's too narrow. Cars going through, there are cars parked both sides. It's like a one-way street if you ask me. There should be a sign one way.
It's called Augusta Avenue. It's like a little...
It's a one-way street. 2 cars cannot go by at the same time. I was just moving out of Augusta to come to this meeting, and I had to wait for the next car to move so I could go. It doesn't make sense.
Is there parking on both sides of Augusta?
No, I don't know
Legally,
what
I don't think so. It's only on one side.
Fine, one side parking, but one side makes it a
I understand
one-way
what you're saying.
street. And please, my mother has to walk there at night sometimes. It's so dark. Please, please do something about it. It's dangerous.
I do want to address the lighting just quickly.
Not one light, we need
But
20 lights.
That's and I'll tell you something.
And it should go on when somebody walks. Obviously, I don't want the neighbors to wake up at it because they're old too.
Well, we should be on. It should be on when it's dark out. It should be on when it's dark out.
100%.
And I want you to know that this town petitioned to the Public Service Commission to be able to take over the street lights because the street lights are owned by Orange and Rockland, and we pay dearly to Orange and Rockland. And we were able to have a great victory at the Public Service Commission to have a new Service Class 6 that's been put in, which allows us now to take over the lighting system. And we are going to buy all the lights in the town.
Good.
And we're
By next
fighting.
week.
We even were able to get the lights that were amateurized and depreciated by Orange and Rockland. In many cases, almost, we believe, 2/3 of all the lights have been depreciated to 0, so that we believe the value of those when we take them over should be 0. Obviously, we're going before the administrative law judge on Orange and Rock on this, but the point is that we would take over all of the lights. We'd be able to put up more lights. We would, just by taking over in the first year, we would save about $280,000, and that would be every year. Because presently, Orange and Rockland charges us more than they would charge the Palisades Mall for lights. They charge us a different, higher municipal rate. So we are taking some dramatic actions to take over all of the lights and address areas to put new lights in.
Good.
And Augusta will be one of those.
It needs so many lights, I'm telling you.
I don't know if we'll put 20 up there, but,
Please, I don't
but
care.
enough so that people could walk safely.
People could walk, it's just really dangerous. And also with these buildings and cars are probably going to be passing through because it might be like a shortcut or whatever. I don't know. It maybe widen you can't even widen the street, you go into people's houses. But I'm saying something's got to be done. And please just remember the old people, you know, and we want them to live long. Unfortunately, people don't live so long these days. You know?
Longer than before.
Okay, maybe, but I want them that they should enjoy their years and their
In
not
quietude.
Yes, and
Right.
just keep that in mind, all of you, please. And I greatly appreciate your time and your efforts for everything that you do for us.
And we appreciate you coming and speaking to us. Thank
Good
you.
night.
And
At the moment, I definitely qualify as one of the old people. Okay, my name is Rochelle Juravel. I live on 43 Remsen. I didn't hear a thing about this until tonight. I didn't know they were discussing it at all. I've been on your website quite a few times recently, looking up property taxes, etc. I do think you should have someplace on your website. Not everyone gets the papers that you put it in. But okay, I am very much against the shopping, but if it's going to go through, I have a couple of questions about it. Is number one, how many parking spaces are there? I think there should have to be 2 parking spaces allotted for each apartment, that the people who are living there won't have to compete with the shopping. And if you're saying you want young couples and old couples, most of them will have 2 cars. I think that's a very important thing. I just see parking spaces, I don't see any numbers. And they should be assigned. Again, I hope the whole thing doesn't happen, but if it does. And one thing in general, I don't want to say anything about anyone in particular, but I think this is a public hearing. But I think anyone can get up and say whatever they want.
Absolutely.
But I think if somebody is related to someone who has a financial position in this, that should be announced to the people listening. I don't think they should go through as just a regular public person. I don't think that's fair. And also, basically, I think that should be a question asked of everybody. Thank you.
You mean, is someone on the board related to someone in?
No, if they're related to anyone who...
Oh, you mean if somebody come up to speak?
Someone who comes up to
I
speak,
understand.
and they're related to someone who has a financial interest in this. That they shouldn't just come up as a private citizen, especially, if they don't live anywhere near the place.
Okay, your points are well taken.
Your last name, please.
Juravel, Juravel.
Thank you.
At 43 Remsen. Thank you. Okay, and you wanted to speak again? Come right up.
I'm not going to introduce myself again. You keep on referring to this corridor as a commercial corridor because it's part of Route 59. The facts on the ground tell us that it's not a commercial corridor. You have Glen Hill, Augusta Estates, Joshua Estates, and all these private streets. We don't have one commercial establishment. You're talking about, you told me the flooring, the tile guy, he's past Route Remsen Avenue, it's a different area. Come and visit and you'll see it's a residential area. So when you're referring to Route 59...
I use Wells Fargo's bank, so...
Right, but Wells Fargo is a bank that closes at night. They're wonderful neighbors. We'd love to have more banks in the vicinity. It doesn't compare to a possible restaurant in the area with clientele coming till 1 in the morning. I'm curious, the original master plan changed the existing zoning to obviously this MV 18, am I 8?
MR8, I think.
MR8. You yourselves changed it to this residential zoning. What you're looking for now is a zoning change, right? Am I correct?
Yes, from MR8
Now, I think
to MU.
originally, am I correct, originally it was commercial zoning and you changed it to residential zoning? Am I correct?
I don't know.
You yourselves voted for that.
I don't know if if the master plan changed it from commercial.
Well, that's even, well, then,
Find that out.
Okay. Well, the facts are, on the ground are that this is a residential area.
I think the applicant made it, I think he used the word ironic, that the Wells Fargo Bank was zoned residential, but it's commercial, and this area was...
Well, there might be a reason why Wells Fargo was zoned residential. They allowed the residents to cross through their property. They act like an excellent, wonderful neighbor. I wish everyone such wonderful neighbors. We consider them residents of the area. The next thing that I would like to address was the real estate agent's suggestion for 2-bedroom apartments for the young professionals and the young couples. I have a suggestion. Why don't you make this whole area 2-bedroom apartments? Forget about the commercial the commercial change, the commercial zoning. And if you're so concerned about two-bedroom apartments, you've got 6.5 acres to bring in many, many rentals, and I'm sure you can do it if you wanted to put your mind to it. That would solve the issue of not enough rentals. Is that an interesting idea? Because honestly, I don't believe the desire here is to help out with rentals. I think the desire here is to make maximum use of every inch of this property. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, thank you. Okay.
He's
anybody
allowed
else?
to. I'm not saying he's not. I told you this, we live in a capitalist.
I'm sorry, I thought you were done. I'm sorry. Go right
No,
ahead. Go right ahead.
He is allowed to, but he's requesting a zoning change. So I think when you request the zoning change, you need to take the needs of the residents and their concerns into account.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address us? Come right up.
Robert Romanowski, 183 Maple Avenue, Muncie. I have a couple quick questions. I'm looking at the design of this project. Couple of things that are badly needed is sidewalks. I know this town does a lot of sidewalk work. I'd like to know if this project is built, will it include sidewalks on the west side of Augusta from Grove Street to Route 59? And also, sidewalks are badly needed on the north side of 59 from the Muncie Bridge on Route 59 all the way up to Remsen Avenue where the bank is. And I'd like to know if this project will include those sidewalks if it were constructed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else that would like to address us in the public hearing? I know that their members of the board want to be able to look at more information and review some of the reports and the traffic reports and other reports as well. So we're going to reserve any decision on this until a future date.
Mr. Supervisor, maybe I can, unless the applicant has anything else to say today, I believe the board, before our next meeting, and we'll have to discuss what date that would be, would like information from the applicant regarding traffic safety. There was some mention of accidents, and I think we would like your traffic consultant to provide some information indicating whether there are any traffic safety concerns that the development would engender that we should be aware of. I believe the traffic study that was submitted studies the traffic impacts of the project as proposed. I think the board would like to know if there's a difference between the potential development if the zone is not changed compared to if it is changed to the mixed-use zone. And also, the board would like some information regarding a real estate tax analysis based on the financial impacts to the town should the development be built, and also compare that to what would be built under the current zoning compared to the proposed zone change. We will also ask our planning consultant to address a number of the issues that were raised this evening and to get Frederick P. Clark's input. And last, I believe the board later in the meeting was going to consider its summer meeting schedule. It might be appropriate to address that now before we adjourn the public hearing.
Our
those are my
next
only comments.
meeting is actually scheduled for the third Thursday of this month.
That would normally be a daytime meeting.
That'd be a daytime meeting. It would be a little bit more difficult for people to get to that meeting. We should probably, do people have, knowing this?
June 26th meeting also.
June 26th is a regular meeting date. That would be a Wednesday night.
Correct. I don't know if Well, we could do that. I'm not sure if that gives enough time for the applicant to submit what we're requesting, and also Mr. Lang to provide what information we want.
There were a couple other things. Well, you gave a good list there, and I'm glad you mentioned to the analysis on the taxes, but also on the street lights and buffers and on parks. And there was some concern on buffers, both going back to Remsen and also buffers going over to Augusta. Were mentioned there as well.
So are we asking the applicant to address?
Would the applicant be able to address in a timely manner the various concerns that, I know you were taking notes as well, concerns that people brought up in a timely fashion so the board could digest your response, our response from our own planners before the 26th?
I believe we can. If I may, if I could address a couple of matters right now. First of all, a number of speakers asked about sidewalks. Sidewalks are in fact proposed for the perimeter of the project. So all along the frontage of Route 59, winding up around the corner of Augusta on the applicant's property. We're not proposing any sidewalks beyond the applicant's property.
So you would be doing from Augusta going north toward...
It's already on here.
Okay.
You see the white line?
Mm-hmm.
These are sidewalks.
So it's a part of Augusta?
This front part of Augusta on the west side, and then along the north side of Route 59.
Okay.
Yeah, what are they supposed to do after the sidewalks? Fly? When they finish the sidewalk, where are people supposed to walk?
Excuse me.
I think there are sidewalks coming up to Augusta on the bridge project on 59.
Mr. Supervisor,
You mean on it?
Supervisor, I have the floor.
Yes.
I didn't interrupt
Mr.
them.
Schwab, let him finish, and then we'll address that. Go right ahead.
Okay. There is... those are the sidewalks that are proposed, and I cannot remember any development. I've been doing this for 32 years. I cannot remember any development in any town or village or any community in Rockland County or any place else in the state of New York where I have practiced that has required sidewalks off the property. And in fact, council can tell you that there are extraordinary restrictions with respect to what the town can require with respect to off-site improvements. Secondly,
sometimes we do ask, though, Mr. Manuel, because on the Elm Street project that the Local Development Corp did, it was requested that we do improvements on the drainage in Spring Valley along Twin and sidewalks there, and we did that, even though it was off our site.
I understand
it could be
that.
requested. But I understand what you're saying about the legalities.
And the board is already asking that we give up a house in lieu of a park. So it's not...
And we may be asking for more buffers and more trees.
Exactly.
And things and fencing and things to keep that quietude.
Right. One other thing that I want to just make sure that the board is clear on, because there was a lot of discussion about adding traffic to Grove and to Augusta, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you that no traffic is going to be added to Grove or Augusta, because clearly some people will be coming from Grove and from Augusta to and from the shopping center, but there is no entrance from the shopping center to Grove or Augusta, period. Okay, now I will tell you also that...
So nobody could come in off of 59, do their shopping, and then go out onto Grove?
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, now I'll tell you that the applicant could have designed it to do that. In fact, could have designed and included a public street running from Grove directly to Route 59 because he's got the width. Okay? That's not proposed, has not been proposed in the past, will not be proposed by this applicant in the future. So I want to make sure that you understand this is not a threat. Okay? This is simply an observation that there is no vehicle access from this site to Grove, directly to Grove or Augusta. Mr. Levine suggested that there has been insufficient time for the public to react to this. The fact is that there was a planning board informational meeting held on November 13th, 2012, at which a lot of the concepts that we're talking about now were proposed and discussed. So the public has had an opportunity since at least November of 2012 to be aware of this project, to come in, take a look at the materials that have been submitted. There's been plenty of opportunity up until now for public input, and there will continue to be plenty of opportunity for public review. And I don't mean to pick on Mr. Levine. I've known him for many, many years, and he's an old friend. In fact, he told me before the meeting that he took some credit for my being in this job. So I'm not sure if it's credit or blame.
You didn't know whether to say thank you or ask for
I don't
condolences?
know. I'll deal with Bruce later. I think that's really it for now. We will prepare the additional materials that have been requested. We will get Mr. Collins from Mazur Consulting, who is our traffic engineer, who is well known to the town, to prepare the additional information. We'll talk about. No, I don't want to talk about that.
And get that levels of service in a lot of those
we'll get that.
intersections.
We'll get that information all taken care of and get it to you in a form that's understandable to lay people. We will look at. We will provide more information with respect to buffers. Frankly, we weren't planning on going through a full site plan review. What I will tell you is that we are very much aware of the fact that there are residences there. There are plans to put in landscaping and noise barriers along the lot lines in order to protect the neighbors from noise. We're obviously aware of these things. And the bottom line here is that whether it is this proposal, okay, or another, or the MR8 proposal, or some other proposal, this land's going to get developed by somebody. It's on Route 59. It's close to Muncie. It is too valuable to sit there and be vacant forever. Okay? If there are people who want it to remain vacant, well, they know what needs to be done. Okay? It gets developed somehow. Okay? We think this is a viable development. We think this is an appropriate development, and we hope that the board thinks so as well.
Thank you very much. And today is June 12th?
12th. No, I don't want to.
So the 26th, if you could have that information to us maybe for 4 or 5 days ahead of that, would you think, would that be appropriate?
Well, there's a relatively short window, I think, as far in advance of the meeting as is reasonably possible.
Yeah, but I don't think the board wants to get it the day before or
Right.
2 days before. We have some time to be able to pick it over and compare it with our planning consultants as well.
We'll speak with Mr. Collins tomorrow.
Okay, good. And Michael started that list, and other members of the board may want to add to the list of other questions. We do want to have public input, and I think some in the public did want to speak again. Did you want to speak again? You're good? Okay. You can absolutely come up and speak to us again. Absolutely, because we want everybody at home to get to hear you.
There's a proposed walkway between Treetop and Green's house on Grove. I suggest that we move it between Green's house and the house adjacent to it that I think the developer owns. Am I correct? Or I think the developer owns, and I'll tell you why. It won't rub the neighbors as much because the way he has the walkway now, look at Resnick's house. On one side he has Grove, on one side he has Treetop, on the other side he'll have a walkway. He has nothing. He'll be surrounded on
So
three
you want
times.
to move it to the north side or to the west side of the property?
The other side of.
I got
do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Did you get it?
I think, Ira, you understand what she's saying, right?
I think you won't antagonize an entire street as much. You're cutting right through all our backyards. Whatever privacy we have is going out the window with that walkway. Now, I know you're promising us that's only going to be a walkway, but at a future planning board meeting, I'm sure Hatzalah and EMS will come and say, can we use it as an emergency access road? So why antagonize a whole block? Think of the future. It's his property. Let him figure it out. And it's only one neighbor who I think had a deal going, gave him a little piece of the property too. So I think you can keep it between him and a friend rather than a whole block. And I really wonder...
You make a very good point.
Right. I really wonder if it's fair to do that to Resnick. I really wonder, would you want to live with three public, your house open to the public on three sides? I'm not even sure that I've ever seen that before. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to address it? Ira, did you want to address it? You don't have to, but if you wanted to address it.
Just in terms of it being used for an emergency exit, it's too narrow.
It's, okay. I'll have our counsel answer that. Mr. Schwab, did you want to say anything?
Just keep the old people in mind.
That's what we like to hear. His question was, how will they be informed as to the next meeting and
Well, the board,
and other information?
The board tonight, I believe, will be adjourning the public hearing until June 26th at 8 o'clock. So that's when it will be.
No, I think we're going to close the public hearing, Michael. We're closing the public hearing and...
No, we're not. We're keeping the public hearing open, and we're adjourning it because there's more information that's going to be submitted that has to be in the record. People will comment on it. So the hearing will remain open until the 26th.
Then we'll have it all hearing.
There's more information. People have a right to
what we get in the mail. It means gibberish.
Okay, so you
We just know there's a meeting. It means that they're making an Empire State Building there, like they're making a kindergarten. We don't know.
Okay, so you will be able to come in to look at any information that they submit as well. And Michael, anybody could come into the clerk's office and get any of the information, correct?
The records that have been submitted, excuse me, the records that have been submitted are public records. You can come into the town clerk's office and during business hours, and you can ask to see the files that are maintained related to the public hearing, to the applicant. I'm not sure what you mean. I mean, everything that's...
He means some of the other information that would be coming up.
So what...
Does this mean that there's something to go look at?
There's a petition for a zone change that was submitted to the town board. So the petition is on file. There is a conceptual plan that was discussed tonight. That is on file. There is an environmental assessment form that accompanied that. That's on file. There is the traffic report. All those exhibits, which I read off at the beginning of the hearing, are all...
I'm asking us, when can we see the revision or whatever happens to that? That's my question. How do we know there's something like that to look at, apart from showing us up here tonight and how, you know, we don't, I haven't studied it. I don't know what's there.
Those color diagrams are not submitted as exhibits. Those, the applicant used tonight for his visual presentation. So we don't have those to show you. What we have is whatever has been formally filed, which are those about 12 or 13 exhibits which I mentioned earlier, including as well as the formal plans that they submitted. And you can come in during business hours, and you're certainly welcome to spend time looking at them.
But there will be an architectural review process as well, where those types of plans will be discussed in more detail too, and that's a public as well. So the big picture of is that we want to work, as Councilman Ullman said, to work on our website so that we'll get more information, so you could even look at it from home and access it that way. But you can come into the clerk's office and he'll direct you to.
Some people complain that they didn't get letters. I don't think letter is included at the moment in the letters.
What happens is there's a notice published, there's posters placed in different areas of the property, and law requires individual notices to go to people within 500 feet of the property. Okay?
And we did put into the record too the petition of the 200 neighbors that signed petitions about this project too. We'll add that in as well. Okay, so we're going to, do we need a motion to adjourn, or are we just going to adjourn until June 26th?
June 26th.
We'll adjourn the hearing until the public hearing until June 26th at 8 o'clock, and we will continue the discussion.
What's this resolution?
Moved by Councilwoman Logan, second by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carries unanimously. I want to thank everybody for coming out and for your input in the public hearing, and there'll be many more. There'll be this, we know, on the 26th, and there'll be other meetings as well. And now we will go into the rest of our meeting tonight. And the next item on the agenda would be the Acceptance of the minutes for our regular meeting of May 13th, moved by Mr. Friedman, second by Mr. Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carries unanimously. For the minutes for the regular meeting of May 16th, moved by Councilwoman Logan, second by Councilman Friedman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carries unanimously. And for the regular meeting of May 22nd, 2013, moved by Councilman Ullman, seconded by Councilman Friedman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carries unanimously. Item number 2 on the agenda is the Town Attorney, our Town Attorney, Michael Klein.
Thank you. We have a few agreements for approval tonight. The first of these is with Cornell Cooperative to provide community-wide education services related to the Phase 2 stormwater regulations.
Moved by Councilman Ullman, second by Councilwoman Logan. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carries unanimously.
The next resolution approves a memorandum of understanding with regard to the town's participation in the Rockland County Rescue, Entry, and Counterterrorism Team, REACT Team. This covers the period of 2013 through 2016.
Moved by Councilwoman Logan, seconded by
Friedman.
Councilman Friedman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carries unanimously.
2A3 is a resolution also dealing with Cornell Cooperative. This involves the provision of educational services to the town with respect to the environmental and historic projects, including the salt box.
Moved by Councilwoman Logan, seconded by Councilman Friedman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carries unanimously.
2A4 has been taken off the agenda, will be added to the next meeting agenda once we have additional information. So we're on to 2A5. This is the approval of a proposal by J.A. Greenwell, a surveyor, with regard to wetlands along Fireman's Memorial Drive.
And the council and I were out there with the Army Corps of Engineers as they walked the property and worked with our engineers and with Torgerson, and Greenwell will now put in the surveying of what they requested. Moved by Councilwoman Logan, seconded by Supervisor Councilman Friedman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carries unanimously.
There's been a recent change in the New York State General Municipal Law, which authorizes claims against municipalities to be filed not only with the clerk of the municipality, but also with the Secretary of State. If we pass a resolution early on in the new law's evolution, then the law permits the town to share in the filing fees that will be received by the state. So the next resolution complies with the change in the general municipal law and will therefore permit the town of Ramapo to receive a portion of the fees when and if such claims are filed with the Secretary of State.
Moved by Councilwoman Logan, seconded by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carries unanimously.
Governor Andrew Cuomo has introduced legislation to end discrimination and inequality based on gender, known as the Women's Equality Act. This resolution is a memorializing resolution urging our state representatives to move as promptly as possible to support and to enact this legislation.
Moved by Councilman Ullman, seconded by Councilman Friedman. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, carries unanimously.
And finally, we have another memorializing resolution. This urges the New York State, based on the current fiscal status of the New York State Pension Fund, to consider reducing the mandates that are passed down on municipalities, including the town of Ramapo, and thus reducing the tax burdens that our taxpayers have to pay.
Moved by Councilman Friedman.
On the question.
And seconded by Councilwoman Logan. On the question, Councilman Friedman.
Thank you. Tonight, this town board will be voting and passing a resolution related to the required pension contributions that local governments like ours have to pay to New York State for the pension. The New York State Comptroller determines the amount that local governments need to contribute towards the state pension fund. The supervisor constantly notes that 12 years ago, it was under $100,000. Today, the required pension contribution is over $6 million a year. The increased pension contributions requirements results in higher taxes. It wreaks havoc on local government budgets like ours. And I think the time has come for the comptroller and for New York State to examine the manner in which they calculate how much money is required from local governments for the state pension fund. Now, recently, the comptroller announced that because of the rise of the stock market this year, the pension fund has hit a record high of over $160 billion. Since the end of the first quarter, the S&P 500 and the stock market has risen another 4%, which would equate to approximately another $7 billion in the pension fund. Now, every single year, Ramapo and other local governments get hit with another increase to how much money we need to contribute towards the pension fund. And that impacts our ability to deliver services, our ability to do things and stay below the tax cap, which is another state mandate that we're all expected and asked to participate in. Now, when the stock market collapsed, local governments had to pitch in and had to increase their contributions. With the rise in the record of the pension fund balance, this resolution, which is the first of its kind in this state, is calling on the comptroller to freeze our pension contribution requirements for the upcoming year, and also to examine the possibility of reducing them so that we can reduce the tax burden and benefit all of New York State taxpayers should benefit from the increase in the stock market and from the pension fund balance. If there's more money in the pension fund, less money should be asked to come from local taxpayers. So we're going to move this. We're hopefully going to be able to reduce the pension requirement contribution for contributions to the state and relieve our taxpayers in this town of this enormous state mandate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Friedman.
On the question?
Councilwoman Logan?
Yes, and I'd like to piggyback on those remarks that Councilman Friedman made as well. It's just not the municipalities in different towns in the state of New York that is affected by the exorbitant pension costs, but it is also our local school districts who also have the same challenges. So I also agree that we should definitely pass this resolution this evening, and I have the support of my husband, who is Bernard Charles, who's on the school board, and he also would like to be able to help to reduce the pension costs as well, so that we can continue to provide the best education for our children in this town, along with the municipality of the town of Ramapo.
Thank you very much. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. The next item on the agenda is police, and it is an authorization for police officers to attend the scales testing in Syracuse, New York on June 11th, 2013, which is yesterday. So it's good that we're getting that in. Moved by Councilwoman Logan, second by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Item number 5, purchasing. Our Director of Purchasing, Mona Montel.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Item 5A on the agenda is the acceptance of a proposal for the 2013 Celebration of Liberty and Pride. This resolution is to accept the technical needs proposal by Dynamic Event Group as listed in your resolution.
Moved by Councilwoman Logan, second by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Item 5B on the agenda is the approval of a lease for the local government radio system tonight. Comco, as you know, they have our towers up. We've reduced the number of cell phones we have. We do use radios for our employees to communicate with each other, and we're asking you to accept their lease as listed here in the resolution.
Moved by Councilwoman Logan, second by Councilman Friedman. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Item 5C on the agenda is in reference to the authorization for plumbing and HVAC on an as-needed basis for the Parks and Recreation Departments. Proposals were submitted, and we're asking you to accept the proposal from Joe Lombardo Plumbing, Inc., as listed in the resolution.
Logan.
Moved by Councilwoman Logan, seconded by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mona. Next is the Parks and Recreation authorization for one employee to attend the Challenger Center 2013 Annual Conference in Washington, D.C., August 11th through 15th.
Logan.
Moved by Councilwoman Logan, seconded by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Item number 7, Building, Zoning, and Planning and Zoning, authorization for one employee to attend the HCV Housing Quality Standards Seminar in Albany, New York, September 23rd through 25th. Moved by Councilwoman Logan, seconded by Councilman Friedman. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Item number 8 is approval of a liquor license for Melanie Enterprises, Inc. in Spring Valley, New York. Moved by
Logan.
Councilwoman Logan, seconded by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Item number 8B, El Tecananzo Restaurant and Bar Corp. in Spring Valley, New York. This is approval of a liquor license. Moved by
Logan.
Councilwoman Logan, seconded by
Friedman.
Councilman Friedman. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. We're ready to set the dates for July and August. July meeting will be July 18th, and the August meeting will be August 15th. Moved by Councilwoman.
Logan.
Time's already set.
Already set.
Thursday meetings?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think we're simply canceling.
Cancel.
This is to cancel the other meetings and set those meetings.
Yes.
Moved by Councilwoman
Yes.
Logan, second by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Any new business, Council? No? Thank you. Any public participation? Anybody in the public want to speak? Come right up.
It's Robert Romanowski, 183 Maple Avenue, Muncie. Tonight, the town board passed a memorializing resolution to support the governor, Andrew Cuomo's Women's Equality Act, but the governor's bill does not go far enough, neither does the town resolution. Women should have the right to equality, and they should have equality to go to work and not face sexual harassment. Former Brooklyn Assemblyman and Kings County Democratic Chairman Vito Lopez was charged with sexually harassing 2 female staff workers. To make the charges against the Assemblyman Lopez go away, Assembly Speaker Sheldon Silver, who has been the Speaker since 1994, worked out a settlement with these women using $103,000 in taxpayer money to make the charges against his friend go away and to silence them. Both the former Assemblyman Vito Lopez and Sheldon Silver are part of the cesspool of corruption in Albany. Both of the governor's bills and the town memorializing resolution should call for Sheldon Silver to resign as Speaker of the New York State Assembly. The second part where this legislation is insufficient is protecting every woman's right to defend herself and family using a firearm and honor the Second Amendment. On the 14th, claiming a message of necessity, the governor pushed and the Assembly passed Governor Cuomo's New York SAFE Act, and the town of Ramapo quickly followed up with a resolution supporting this legislation. But what the SAFE Act did is limit magazine capacity to 7 rounds, severely restricting everyone, including a woman's ability to protect themselves from a criminal attack. Criminals do not follow the law. You spoke tonight during a public hearing about the zone change with constitutional rights. New York State has been infringing upon the constitutional rights of its citizens, and the town of Ramapo is supporting it with its memorializing resolution supporting the SAFE Act. Given the proposed bill and the town of Ramapo resolution, they both need to be updated to address these 2 issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Romanowski. As a matter of fact, I spoke with Deputy Supervisor Withers, and we are working on putting together a committee from the people that spoke at our session on the SAFE Act. There were a lot of gun owners who came out and spoke, and we requested that we continue that conversation, and we're putting together some people to have a committee that can work on it, people from the speakers. So we will continue to work on that, Mr. Romanowski. Anybody else in the public would like to speak? Come right up.
Good evening.
Good
This is
evening.
Volkan, 13 West Maple in Muncie, unincorporated Ramapo. First of all, I want to commend you, and I do not envy your job in the least. I watched you and listened to you walk a fine line between the raindrops, trying to please everybody. You have a hell of a job, and you do a great job at it. Speaking of traffic on Route 59, I travel frequently to Clarkstown, as Supervisor knows, and there's a tremendous bottleneck where you have, as soon as the border at the thruway, exit 14, where you go from 4 lanes plus a shoulder and a concrete barrier in the center to 2 for about 50 feet, 2 lanes, and then it's 1 lane all the way down to Route 202. past Saffron Hospital. I know it's a multi-town, multi-municipality issue, but I would ask the board consider working with the Village of Spring Valley, Village of Saffron, and the DOT. Maybe we can incorporate it into the Tappan Zee construction, adding it. There's shoulders on Route 59 in Spring Valley by BMW. In that section, you have shoulders on each side, which could hold a turning lane and a straight lane. Maybe we need to, enforce the town's ability to, I forget the term, your right of way for the first 5 or 10 feet, like we did on Maple Avenue project. But I strongly urge you to look into that and at least add 1 lane plus turning lanes on each side. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Schwab spoke about my father. I can remember going to meetings in Spring Valley in the 1960s on that exact roadway. There was a Joe Judge. It was called Joe Judge, the Golden Way. They didn't want to have the bypass, and that bypass never took place. And they didn't want to increase the side of the road there. And that's why it starts right there in the Clarkstown border as you go toward Nanuet. It does need to be improved. The entire corridor needs to be improved from, as you said, Suffern all the way through Spring Valley. And as a matter of fact, we were able to get the state to do the paving from the Suffern section coming all the way up to Airmont. I will say that one of the things, as a member of the task force for the Tappan Zee project, I have been pounding the table on is 14X. And that would be an interchange that would come off of the thruway at Remsen Avenue and would alleviate people going to the Muncie from either getting off in Spring Valley and going on that section or getting off in 14B and doubling back through Montebello. And it makes sense. I think we've been able to get the federal authorities to realize that it meets their corridor restrictions. There's 2 miles between interchanges. It does make that. And so it meets the federal standards there. And I think we've gotten a lot of traction on being able to get a proper way to get in and out of Muncie, and actually in making a bus rapid transit stop right in Muncie at 306, which would have the ability to come right off of the thruway there. So you're right on the mark on those, on the fact that Route 59 is the only east-west other than the thruway, and is so congested, and we need to find better ways. And I do know that you know a lot of people in Clarkstown, because I was speaking with a group of Clarkstown police officers, about 20 of them, and then you came into the room, and they all stopped talking to me, and they all went over to talk to you. So I know how much you are known in the law enforcement, and thank you for all your work, and thank you for the work that you do in this town to help coordinate with the emergency responses and with the police. And we are working to try to codify that to make you that liaison person as well. So,
Supervisor, if I just may add on,
yes.
when you're on the task force, I think the thruway idea on Remsen would be great. Maybe possibly look, I know it's not part of the thruway, entrance ramp to Garden State, which is probably very minimal cost because it's the same level, would actually alleviate a lot of traffic from people not an exit ramp, but an entrance ramp to the Garden State. Thereby, people are avoiding going down all the way down to Spring Valley to go on the thruway to get to the Garden State. It's right there, an entrance ramp.
That's
it's
a very
level,
good point.
It's the same level, and it's right there.
I will incorporate that into my my comments. Thank you. That's right.
Before my time.
Okay, motion to close public participation, moved by Councilwoman Logan, second by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Any council member comments? Okay, with that, we will entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councilwoman Logan, second by Councilman Ullman. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you all very much. We're adjourned.